Hey everyone, before we start, I just wanted to say a big happy Thanksgiving to all of you. Wanted to thank all of the listeners out there. I would not be doing this if it weren't for you who are listening each and every week. The reason why I am in this field and I started doing this years ago, and I love covering sports and pop culture is to interact with all of you. So a big happy Thanksgiving in a very trying year. Thank you to all the listeners. Big thank you to all the sponsors of That's What G Said podcast. We've had many right now currently: SarahCandles.com, Cindy Carava, Full Service Realtor, Stable Duel, OldSmokeClothing.com, Thrive Fantasy, Sam Houston Racetrack, Pleasanton, a couple that we've worked with. And thank you to my family. I want a big thanks to my son, my girlfriend, and I'm very happy for my health again. Back in 2010, during Thanksgiving, I was actually in the hospital with cancer. So in another trying year of 2020 for everyone, I hope all of you are safe and doing well, and let's be thankful for everything that we have. I'm thankful for all of you tuning in to another episode of That's What G Said. Now let's get over to Joey Cleveland for that theme song. Happy Thanksgiving. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of That's What G Said podcast. It is Thursday, November the 26th, 2020, and we have a ton to discuss. We're going to get right into the NFL Thanksgiving games. Only 2 games now with the postponement of the Ravens-Steelers, but Darin Zoccali joined me, and we talked about all 3 of those games before they made the announcement of the postponement. So I left in the discussion about the Pittsburgh-Baltimore game because that game is going to end up happening on a little bit later on Sunday. We're going to go through the rest of NFL Week 12. I'm going to give you my early thoughts on Week 12. NBA free agency, everything that went down free agency with all the trades. We're going to go through the Stable Duel schedule for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then I got tons of Thursday and Friday racing for you. We got plays from Churchill Downs on Thanksgiving. We've got Del Mar on Thanksgiving. And then on Friday, we've got full card Churchill Downs thoughts. A couple plays from Aqueduct for you on a card with a few different stakes races. We've got Delta Downs plays for you. And Delta also has a Stable Duel contest. We've got Del Mar plays for you. And they've also got a Stable Duel contest. Then we've got a discussion on Survivor Series. We talk about what happened over the weekend, the Undertaker, the 30-year anniversary, and everything going on in the WWE with Darin Zoccali. And then finish things off with a recap. Spoiler alert, that's why I put it at the very end, of The Mandalorian. We go through the most recent episode of The Mandalorian, as lots of things are happening now in the last few episodes. We're up to Season 2, Episode 4 now, recapping as every new episode comes out, basically on Friday. And I usually recap that one, anywhere to 3 or 4 days to a week or so after. So, again, football, basketball, tons of horse racing for Thursday, for Friday. Friday, we have 4 different tracks that we're covering, some wrestling, and then The Mandalorian. So, just to give you an idea of what the racing looks like too for the next couple days. On Thursday at Churchill, we're going to talk races 2, 3, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10 in the Grade 2 Falls City. On Thursday for Del Mar, we talk races 2, 3, 4, 6, 7 with the Grade 3 Red Carpet. On Friday, Churchill full card with the Grade 1 Clark as their feature. Aqueduct Friday, talk races 1, 5, 8, and 9. There are 3 stakes races on that card with the Grade 3 Comley as the headliner there. At Delta on Friday, I'm going to go through races 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They have the Treasure Chest Stakes, a really nice stakes race at Delta on Friday. And then Del Mar Friday, full card thoughts. it's a little chalky, so I probably only have 3 or 4 plays, but I do give quick thoughts on the card there with the feature, the Grade 2 Hollywood Turf Cup. So that's Thursday, Friday on this show. I couldn't even fit all of the weekend stuff on, so I'm going to do a bonus Thanksgiving show because I love everybody, where I'm going to talk about the Saturday racing. Andrew Champagne's going to join me. We're going to talk a little bit about the Churchill Saturday card because it's one of those all 2-year-old cards, and they have the Grade 2 Golden Rod, the Grade 2 Kentucky Jockey Club Gold Cup. We're going to talk about Delta Downs and the huge stable duel contest going on there on Saturday. They have the Delta Mile, and then at Del Mar, 3 graded stakes races with the Hollywood Derby, the Seabiscuit, and the Jimmy Durante, and a huge stable duel contest, which you'll hear more about in just a little bit. Right now, we get into the NFL. We're going to talk about the Thanksgiving Thursday games with Darin Zoccali. We really get into all 3 of the games that were supposed to be on Thanksgiving, and so we go in order. First, we talk the morning game, Texans-Lions, then we talk Cowboys versus Washington, and then afterwards we talk about the Pittsburgh-Baltimore game that has moved. Following that, I'm going to go through the rest of the Week 12 games coming up. So recording this a little early in the week because with Thanksgiving holiday, we know that we have 3 NFL games this week. So what I'll do is I have a guest to join me to talk about those 3 games, and then I'll breeze through the rest of the NFL slate. But we'll get into the 3 games on Thanksgiving as Darin. When you look at Darin Zoccali joins me to talk about them. When you look at the slate initially, it's like, you kind of went, But there are some interesting things in these games. First, we get the train wreck that is the Lions. How long is Matt Patricia going to last with this team when he is a 13-28-1 and they just got shut out last week by Carolina? We got a second game where we have 2 teams that are 3-7, but they're in the division, the NFC East, where your team is in. And whoever wins this game is actually going to be in first place by a half game heading into the weekend. And then we got the Steelers and the Ravens, one of the best rivalries of the last 15 to 20 years, and a game where Pittsburgh can really put their foot on the throat of that division. They can move to 11-0, and they can put Baltimore in sort of a bad way. So there's a lot of interesting things heading into the 3-game slate we have on Thursday.
Yeah, no question about it. Like you mentioned, there's a lot of stuff going on with Detroit. Having a completely broken offense is not normally the narrative that we hear about the Lions. That we've known them for years in this Stafford era to lose some heartbreaking shootouts in which they score a ton of points and the team that they're playing against scores a ton +1. That couldn't be farther from the case of what the Lions are right now. The NFC East is completely up for grabs. You now have 4 teams essentially within half a game of one another. So one of these 2 teams in this completely inscrutable division will be at the least a shareholder of first place. And like you said, there are some questions about this Baltimore-Pittsburgh game, unfortunately, because of all the COVID
stuff
coming out of the Ravens. And, knowing my luck, the game's going to get postponed because I'm in a box pool and actually drew 0-7 for this game.
It was great numbers.
Yeah. So, because of that, and the guy says to me in a text today, he says, listen, if that game cancels, we're just going to, increase the prizes on the first 2 games. And of course, I don't have anywhere near as good numbers.
Terrible numbers.
Take it to the bank that the night game probably gets canceled. But yeah, Baltimore-Pittsburgh is a tremendous rivalry. And Pittsburgh, of course, was the only undefeated team left. And they are like a locomotive full steam ahead at this point.
So let's start with the morning game. The line in this one, Houston is now up to around a 3-point favorite at Detroit. The over-under this game is 51.5. Now, keep in mind, since these are going to be multiple games early in the week, we're also recording this late on Tuesday. With all 3 of these games, there's a lot of injury stuff to check. It's kind of funny, actually, that the Cowboys-Washington game doesn't feel like there's as much as the other 2. But in this one in particular, you have on the Texans side, Randall Cobb is out. Kenny Stills is going to be a game-time decision. And then on the offensive line, there's a couple offensive linemen that are banged up for the Texans to keep an eye on also. Then on the Detroit side, Golladay is probably going to be out again. Swift, keep an eye on him. He's probably going to be out. Stafford has been banged up. Amendola is going to be out. So there are a lot of skill position players that are going to be out in this one. Houston is 3-7 straight up, 3-7 against the spread. Detroit 4-6 straight up, 4-6 against the spread. This game opened at around 2.5. It's up to 3. And, I mean, the Lions just got shut out, Darin, by a team that was starting a backup quarterback and a backup running back. So if you make the excuse for the Lions, they're missing some of their skill players. I mean, they just lost to a Carolina team that was also missing some of their better players and their starting quarterback. And Detroit only got 185 yards of total offense. They only scored 10 first downs. They only had 10 first downs against Carolina last week. That game almost felt like a give-up game. Like a game that a team gives when they're giving up on their coach and they sort of roll over and they just had absolutely nothing. And when we talk about Matt Patricia, he took over a team that was 9-7 that made the playoffs. And he has been horrible since. I don't like playing a situation like this, and the Texans don't feel like they're good enough to be a team that you want to play a ton. You want to be laying a bunch of points on the road. But I don't know how I could play Detroit in here at anything under 3. Like if it got up to 3.5, 4, I could maybe start thinking about playing Detroit. But I think that might have been the white flag that they waved last week.
Yeah, if you actually got ahead of the curve in this game, and like Houston last week, the line actually opened Lions -2. So
yeah.
There's been a 5-point swing here
in just a week. Look ahead.
Yeah, and in addition to all the other injuries, Stafford's also dealing with a ligament injury in his throwing thumb. If you watched the game last week, he did not make nearly as many downfield throws as he typically does. Golladay not being in the lineup could certainly be a part of that, but it did not look like the Matt Stafford that we typically see as a healthy Matt Stafford. Peterson was terrible on the ground as well. Hawkinson even though he caught 4 balls, I think, for 68 yards. Hawkinson's dealing with a bit of an issue with a foot that's kind of seen his snap share down a little bit from his previous couple of weeks. So there's a lot of things going on with the Lions that are not good at all. And the Texans have a lot of issues too, don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
David Johnson has not been there. Duke Johnson, who's basically been a complimentary back for the majority of his career, has kind of taken over the lion's share of carries. You mentioned on the offensive line, Tunsil has had some issues. It looks like he might be giving it a go this week because he returned to practice. DeAndre Swift actually returned to practice on a limited session on Tuesday, so maybe he's going to play for the Lions. But this is an ugly, like bang-up looking kind of game. And when a game looks this ugly for me, I can't possibly take the Lions. I don't feel great about the Texans with all the issues that they have. The one thing that I kind of like, though, I like the under.
Yeah.
I mean, 51.5 for for a team that got shut out last week. And I get it. Neither of these teams have an all-world defense. But there are so many issues with both teams on offense. Getting to 52 points for me just feels like a lot. Now, if I'm going to do anything here, I'm probably going to take the under.
I would lean under, and same thing. I would lean on the Texans, but I just wouldn't feel comfortable laying 3 and anything over 3 with a Texans team that isn't great. Some positive things to look at for the Texans, and so like if I'm playing fantasy and I'm playing some DFS this day, I would definitely look at some of the a couple of the Texans. Probably their top receivers in Cooks and Fuller and Watson in particular. Since week 5, he has had the best Pro Football Focus passing grade in the league. And the passing offense is actually first in per play efficiency. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to blow it up and score 40. That just means they're passing the ball very, very well and efficiently, much different than they were under O'Brien. And when you really look at the Texans and you look at some of their losses early on in the season, I don't think this is a good team, but to me, the Texans are like a 500 team to like slightly under 500. And they have a quarterback and some playmakers that are good enough for them to win some games that they probably shouldn't win. And they've lost some games to some good teams. They lost to the Chiefs. They lost to the Ravens. They lost to the Steelers. And then after they lost to the Vikings, they fired their head coach. And then since then, they've beaten the Jags twice, who are no good. But they had a horrible loss to the Titans where they should have won that game. There was no excuses for losing that game late. And they lost to Green Bay. They lost 10-7 to the Browns. They beat the Patriots. They're like a 500 team. They just feel better than the Lions. Overall, Kiki QT, if you're looking for somebody for like a deep flyer as like a really cheap option in some of your DFS leagues, he's going to be the third receiver there behind Cooks and Fuller. So he'll run a few more routes. Maybe you can get him on a flyer into the end zone for super cheap. FanDuel, DraftKings, anything that you're playing like that. But for me, I'm with you. Like under, I would lean. I'm definitely more on the Texans side than the Lions, but no really strong play either way in this one as we move to game 2 of the 3-game slate on Thanksgiving. And this one, a few weeks ago, we looked at it and rolled our eyes, Cowboys, Washington. And now with the Eagles, I mean, honestly, for a minute, we got to talk. How disappointing the Eagles have been with the chance. I know they're banged up. I know they've had a lot of injuries. They've had a couple of opportunities to just take this division by the stranglehold and just, hey, Philly, if you're a 500 team, you can win this division by 2 or 3 games. And they haven't even been able to do that. They've been so disappointing since their Super Bowl win, and coaching wise and everything. I mean, it's just, man, they're 3-6-1 now. And what's a little bit scary for them, Darin, is when you just look at upcoming schedules, like you compare the schedules that the Giants have and that Dallas have and that Washington has. Look at Dallas. Dallas and Washington play each other. Then Dallas plays Baltimore. After that, they go at Cincy, 49ers, Eagles, Giants. That's not too difficult. Washington, they got the Pittsburgh 49ers, Seattle, Carolina, Philly. That's a little bit more difficult. But Philly's in some trouble. They've got some tough games on their schedule. And so, I mean, you as a Giants fan, this is going to be an interesting game for you. You're watching two teams that you probably look at and think, we're easily as good as these teams.
Yeah, as a Giants fan, it's hard not to feel – and it's not just based on – there's a lot of things to go into this. You can't objectively watch the Giants for the last 10 weeks and not come away with the conclusion that they're a much better team right now than they were 3-4 weeks ago. They've developed – they're figuring things out. Keep in mind, like all other – I get all other teams, everybody didn't have a preseason and they're dealing with the same issues. But second-year quarterback, all-world running back out for the season week 2. Banged up, wide receivers that have kind of been in and out of the lineup at times to start the year. New coaching staff, new offensive coordinator. That's a lot of things to figure out. Mm-hmm. I'm starting to figure them out. There's a lot of talent on that Giants offense. The defense is playing much better than I could have ever imagined, especially in the secondary. And when you take a look at this, I mean, yeah, I'm not saying that the Eagles haven't had issues because they've certainly had a ton of injuries. But, so have the Giants.
Everybody has this year.
Yeah,
and like I just mentioned the Carolina team that's been playing without Teddy Bridgewater and CMC, and they just shut out the Lions 20-0. Taysom Hill starting for the Saints. You know what I mean? Like, your team's missing Barkley. Like, everybody's having major issues. It's just we've all wanted to give the Eagles the benefit of the doubt and the mulligan over and over and over and over, and said, okay, once they get healthy, they're going to come together and be a legitimate contender. And they're not, and they're in trouble. They play Seahawks on Monday Night Football. Then they play at the Packers, the Saints, at the Cardinals. That's the next 4 games for the Eagles. They could lose all 4 of those games.
They absolutely could. And with the Eagles, from my vantage point, I truly believe that the problem with the Eagles is very easily identifiable. It's Carson Wentz.
He's bad.
He's terrible. I mean, there are some throws that he makes where you have to be saying to yourself, what could he possibly have seen, and what could he have possibly been thinking? Like, Daniel Jones makes mistakes, but he's a second-year player that's still figuring things out. Carson Wentz has been in the league for, a few years now. He's the number 1 draft pick. I mean, this guy is not only is he not getting better, he's much worse.
He is the trifecta. He leads the NFL in fumbles, interceptions, and sacks.
Well, and if you would have said to me coming into the season, hey, Darin, Thanksgiving week, there's going to be a quarterback in the NFC East that leads the NFL in fumbles, interceptions, and sacks, I'm going to say, oh, my God, Daniel Jones is a shit show.
Yeah.
I would have automatically thought it was him.
Baker or somebody would have said, you know what I mean? Like, you wouldn't have predicted this, and it's unfortunate because I think it's one of a couple things, and we're talking NFC East, and we'll get to the Cowboys Washington in just a second, but this is all part of the conversation with the NFC East, and this is a massive game in the NFC East. It's like one of those things where I sort of feel bad for him because I do think that there have been some situations because of times where he's been with, he early on, he had this amazing success rate when they were going well and he was having that MVP run that year when they ended up winning and when he wasn't there to win the Super Bowl for them. But when they were on that good run, he was doing things on like third and long and third down that was super unsustainable, but he was making these great plays into really tight windows that you just can't do. And then what ends up happening is you lose a couple of your linemen, so your line's not as good, so you're not getting as much time to make those kind of plays, and the skill position players that helped you make those plays aren't there anymore, and you still kind of try to force it, and unfortunately that's been what he's been doing for the last 2 years now. He hasn't changed his game at all with the personnel and realized, oh, I don't have a line or I don't have the skill position players. I can't turn the ball over. I need to be better for our team as far as just making plays. And it's unfortunate because it's like you could see it happening. And when you go back through his last year and a half, it's like, well, it makes sense why he's tried to force things and why but he can't be that guy anymore. And he just won't do it. He threw one of the worst pick sixes last week against the Browns that I've seen in a while. I mean, it was right to the defender who was gone. And I mean, that's it. That's the difference in a game that you end up losing by 5 in a low scoring game.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can point to those bad decisions that he makes and say, this is why, they've lost games. And you talk about like with the Giants. I mean, look, your record is what it is. You win games and you lose games. But when you take a look at the Giants in terms of the games that they played, and I'm never going to say games that they should have won.
Because could have is though.
But could have. I mean, the game, I'm not going to say that they could have beaten the Steelers, but they were in the game against an undefeated team in the fourth quarter. They could have easily beaten the Bears. They had goal to go in the fourth at the end of the game to beat them. They could have easily beaten the Cowboys. They could have easily beaten the Eagles the first time around. They were in the game with the Rams. They actually held the Rams, who you saw last night, throwing the ball all over the place against the vaunted Tampa Bay Buccaneer defense that you can't hear enough about in the NFL. They held the Ram team to 17 points. So, and there's been other examples too. They've been in almost every game with the exception of the 49er game. And they could be. They're 3-7. They could be 4-6. They could be 5-5. They could be 6-4. If they are going to start to become that better team that figures out how to win those games down the stretch, you would, from my point of view, given the health scenario of them versus the other teams, given the quarterback position for them versus the other teams, and given the fact that the team is coming together, where other teams seem to be having some other issues in the division. I think I would rather be in their position than any of the other 3 teams that are currently in the NFC East.
I completely agree, and 2 of them are playing on Thursday in the middle game of the 3-game slate. Cowboys are a 3-point favorite at home against Washington football team. Over-under in this game is 46. Cowboys are 3-7 straight up, 2-8 against the spread. They were 0-8 to start, but they've covered their last 2 games. The Washington football team 3-7 straight up, 5-5 against the spread. Winner in this game will be in first for a few days, at least until the Giants play. And the Eagles, we see what happened. They'll be a half game ahead of them. They're both coming off of victories. And you know what? For Dallas, they actually looked pretty decent coming off of the bye. And so I like that they had a little time to say, hey, okay, now we don't have Dak. We're going to be working with Dalton. We have to kind of change some things here. We have to do some things that Dalton can do well, and maybe some things that take some things out of the playbook that he didn't do well. This was a much better offense overall. Dalton was 22 for 32. He had 203 yards passing, 3 touchdowns and an interception, just 1 sack, which was key. Zeke had 21 carries. He had 103 yards rushing. He had a couple receptions and a touchdown. Overall, as a team, they had 5.8 yards per rush. Pollard was really good running the ball too. They're going to be playing a slightly better defense in Washington. That's number 6 overall in defensive DVOA. But Washington's coming off of a game, Darin, where they sort of got lucky. They won 20-9, but they were down in that game. They were down in a game where the Bengals had missed 2 field goals, missed an extra point, and turned the ball over on downs, like 4th and 2 going in, and they were still up on Washington until Burrow got hurt. And then that was it. And then the game completely changed. Have to mention the really cool feel-good story about Alex Smith after an injury and surgeries and an infection to where they thought this guy might lose his leg and maybe lose his life. He is back on the field and starting, and he won a game starting last week. And you know what? Both of these teams have some interesting weapons. Gibson starting to look better for Washington, the rookie running back. They have a good running back, McKissick, who catches balls out of the backfield. He's very productive in fantasy. And McLaren might be a good play this week in fantasy because Dallas has a banged-up secondary. They're going to be without their cornerback, Anthony Brown. Probably Anthony Brown. He left the game Sunday. They're already going to be missing one of their rookie starters. So some things on both sides to look at in here. This is also going to be a sort of a revenge game. I guess that nasty hit a couple weeks back on Dalton was against Washington, so maybe he wants to even more stick it to them. What do you think in this Dallas-Washington game?
Yeah, we'll be remiss to not point out that going into Thanksgiving, over the last 14, 15 years, I think it's 15 years, favorites straight up are 40-6. On Thanksgiving, and they're 33-13 against the spread, going back to 2000.
Chalk.
Yeah, so big time chalk fest on Thanksgiving historically. Yeah, I mean, look, I think the Cowboys against another team with a different quarterback. I think that the Cowboys would be in a lot more trouble. No Anthony Brown, no Trevon Diggs. Rashard Robinson, who came up and who was from the practice squad, did not look good against the Vikings. And I imagine he's going to be starting. So, maybe they can pick on him a little bit. But, look, if the Redskins are going to be successful, I think they're going to have to do 2 things. I think they're going to have to run the ball really well with Gibson, and I think they have to make some smart checkdowns to McKissick. I think that's going to be the key to their success here. For the Cowboys, I think they got to run the ball well and take the pressure off Dalton. If they do that, they're in the game. I think it's a close game. I think it's evenly matched. If I was going to bet this game, and I don't have a strong feeling for it, I would probably take the 3 points with the Redskins because I don't think that there's more than 3-point separation right now between the 2 teams. I like the way Washington has been running the ball. I think they're starting to realize more and more that Gibson is their best weapon. And I think he's going to become more and more involved in the offense the rest of the season. I expect him to have an 18 to 20 touch game. And if they get him rolling early, like they did against the Bengals, it could go a long way to success for them.
Yeah, at 3, same thing here. Like 3, it feels about right. If it was a half either way, like if it was 2.5, I'd lean Cowboys. At 3.5, I'd lean Washington because it feels like it's probably going to be a close game, and that number is key. The number I might be looking at is the over-under is starting to click down a little to 46. I'm seeing in some spots, and I might go over at that number because I think that's kind of low, and I could see these 2 teams just being right in that range there, getting over the 46. I don't think. Like, you look at Washington and they have a good defense, but again, you look at a team like the Bengals that were able to move the ball on them fine up and down the field last week, and you can move the ball against Washington. Even the Lions a couple of weeks back were moving the ball up and down against Washington. So I think Dallas will be able to move the ball, and and Dallas's defense is not good. Washington, like you said, they're running the ball a lot better, and I don't think it's going to be big shots from Alex Smith. It's going to be checkdowns and short little he's an accurate check down and an accurate short passing quarterback. He just can't let it loose and let it rip down the field. So those are some I'm looking at. Maybe throw a McLaren and a McKissick in there if you're playing some DFS. Gibson's been very, very good as of late, but no real strong opinion either way. What's difficult about Dallas too is that they're, from a regular football perspective, they've got phenomenal receivers. from a fantasy football perspective, it makes it a little bit difficult because is it going to be Cooper? Is it going to be Lamb? Is it going to be Gallup? Even Schultz is getting a little bit of run sometimes. And now you get two backs that are in the mix with Pollard and with Zeke. So it's kind of hard sometimes to hone in on which one of the receivers it's going to be.
Yeah, from a DFS standpoint, it's tricky. Plus you got Dalton, to consider as well. It's still a downgrade from Dak, no matter how you look at it. It's an upgrade from where they were a few weeks ago, don't get me wrong. But it's hard to know from week to week which receiver is going to be the guy. Lamb could be more of a deep threat with Gallup. Cooper is a guy that gets open and could be a possession guy. Are you looking for catches? Are you looking for yards? Yeah, it's tricky. From a DFS standpoint, you really got to flip a coin. You never know which one is going to show up. I think it's a close game, though, if you're betting the game. I agree with you on the over-under. I think there will be some points scored. Washington does have a good pass rush, but, neither of these teams are really known for clamping down on defense. I could definitely see this game being like a 27-24 type game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would lean slightly over, like I said, that number. I mean, I think Dallas wins, but make sure you're on the right side of the number either way. So see if you can wait for, if you're going to, on the Washington side, you want 2.5. If you're on the Dallas side, if you're Washington side, 3.5, Dallas side, 2.5. As we move to the third and final game, and as Darin mentioned at the beginning, you really have to keep an eye on this one because there are some major COVID issues. Of course, Darin, in 2020, the marquee game on Thanksgiving night when everyone's around in a year where Thanksgiving has basically been canceled, we are going to have a game where we don't even really know if it's going to go on. I'll tell you this, the NFL is going to do everything they can to play this game. They are going to really, really try. So from the Ravens' perspective, they're going to be without, we know already, J.K. Dobbins, Mark Ingram, and Brandon Williams, which is J.K. Dobbins coming off of his best game where he really looked like he was finally like taking this backfield by the stranglehold and going to be the guy moving forward. So that's an obvious bummer, and we hope for all of them that they don't have any symptoms or health issues or anything. But again, we're recording this late Tuesday night. This show is going to be out Wednesday. You have to just monitor what's going on here. That's why this number has moved so much. You would have assumed this to be, well, think about this. When these two teams played against each other at Baltimore just a month ago, Baltimore opened up as a 6-point favorite in that game that ended up like leveling off. It came down a little bit, but definitely it was on the Baltimore side. This game opened up and we would have thought it would have been Pittsburgh favored by a couple points, probably, I think it was 2.5 to 3. And now it's floated all the way up to 5.5 in some spots. Total is 44.5, very, very low. So you've got the 10-0 Pittsburgh Steelers. They are 8-2 against the spread. Against the 6-4 Baltimore Ravens, they are 4-6 against the spread. And Darin, right now, the Ravens are not in the playoffs. If this playoff started today, they would not be in. They blew a 10-point lead to the Titans last week. They, plain and simple, have not looked good offensively at all. I think a lot of us, because they were so good last year and because Lamar was so awesome and they were so efficient and they went up and down and they had that great win streak, we've all been kind of waiting for them to get back to that point. And I think it's pretty safe to say, like, this group just is not that group.
No, and I think a part of it is the fact that, look, the NFL is a very intellectually gifted league in terms of coaches. And sure, Lamar Jackson is a tremendous athlete, but he brings a specific skill set that's going to initially work. And now what you're starting to see is the league has figured out Lamar Jackson. Figured out what you need to do to force him to make throws that he doesn't want to make.
Get uncomfortable. Yep.
Get him uncomfortable, contain him. Yes, does he have he has 575 yards on the ground, rushing. But a lot of that was done earlier in the year. He's missing a lot of receivers. His leading wide receiver over the last 4 games has 6 catches on 17 targets for 55 yards in Marquise Hollywood Brown. Mark Andrews is probably right now their best pass catcher, but he's only got 38 catches on the year so far. The running game, I'm a proponent. I understand that a lot of these teams now, they like this running back by committee approach. That's fine. They think they're going to keep guys fresh. And I'm not going to say that I know more than NFL coaches and analytics and so on and so forth. But there is something to be said for getting a guy the ball enough that he becomes comfortable in what he's doing.
In a rhythm, yeah.
And when you put a guy in and he carries the ball on first down, and then you do play action second down, you throw the ball third down, you don't get it. Then the next series you bring, that was Ingram. Then the next series you bring in Edwards, he doesn't touch the ball. Then the next series you bring in Dobbins, he gets a carry. Then you go back to Edwards, who gets a carry. That's no good.
No.
These guys have to get some consistent time touching the ball. Now, maybe that will work to Edwards' advantage this week because Ingram is out, Dobbins is out. I don't know what they're going to do in terms of their other running back situation. Maybe
I think they brought Justice Hill, I believe, has been activated, so someone who's going to get some touches. And it's funny to the opposite of the point that you made, or to piggyback it, and look at what happened to them last week. Look at what every week with Derrick Henry. It seems like every week with Henry, he goes into the second half or starting the fourth quarter, he's got like 40, 50 yards. He's been okay, and then he just wears you down. It's a combination of him wearing you down, him constantly being in a rhythm because he's that guy, and we see it still with some of the bell cow running backs. I agree with you. It's just everything has been a little bit off for them throughout this year. They just have not had very good flow. I mean, they've lost 3 of their last 4 now, and they have the number 23rd ranked offense by Football Outsiders DVOA. I mean, we're not even talking like they are a below average offense, and they were a top tier offense. But keep in mind, the last time they played Pitt, they still should have won. They were driving late. If you just look at some of the pure stats in that game, everything was pointing to a Baltimore win, but they just could not get the job done. And I mean, Darin, you were mentioning some of their skill players. They're to the point now where they were throwing like some of their best offense late in the game against the Titans. After the Titans punched him back in the mouth, they were throwing screen passes to Dez Bryant, who's only been around for a few weeks. Like, that was their best play.
Yeah. And by the way, would be remiss to not point out that a lot of these problems have also come in sync with Ronnie Stanley not being there.
Yep, and up in the front, they're not the same team in the trenches that they were last year on the offensive side or the defensive side of the ball up front. Nope.
I mean, Matt Skura is probably, in the top third as a center in the league. Orlando, but I mean, when you take a look at the rest of it, Orlando Brown, Ben Powers, and Bradley Bozeman, it's just not the same offensive line without Ronnie Stanley. And that's hurting them a lot. I'm sure it's hurting how they scheme quite a bit. And I'm sure that, the looks that Lamar Jackson is getting from a defensive standpoint is probably starting to become a bit more confusing because they're figuring out what to do with him. And if this is the way things are going to progress, long term, I don't like their chances. And I definitely don't like their chances coming up, Thursday night against a Steeler team that, in my opinion, is probably a top 2, top 3 defense in the NFL. Roethlisberger is banged up. Every game he has been hobbling around, and, he landed on that elbow, a couple of games ago, and took him a while to shake that off. But, I mean, unless Roethlisberger is literally in a full body cast, it seems to not matter. So I really have a hard time seeing a scenario where the Steelers don't win this game at home. Look, they're not going to go 16-0. I don't think. They're going to get picked off at some point, and you would have thought that against the Ravens would have been one of those times.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that the Ravens are coming into this game,
it's so hard. And then the COVID stuff, like they're coming in with all this bad. Like every week it's been like, okay, the Ravens are going to get back. Last week they played a terrible Tennessee defense, which was a perfect for them to score a bunch of points. They were up 10, couldn't seal the deal. Now you got this COVID stuff coming in on a short week. I would love, like, this is exactly the time when you just start playing against the undefeated team every week, like you said, because it's just going to catch up with them. Like, you play against them, like you play the other opposite team in the point spread every week because we've seen it. You just, like, you want to lose a game almost before you go into the playoffs.
Right. No, exactly. And like, look, they have I thought, there were some interesting games coming up. At Buffalo is a game that they could lose. They have a game against the Colts that they could lose. If they go into the last game at Cleveland, and they're 14-1 or something like that, and they don't need to win the game, that's certainly a game that they could lose. But, I mean, you take a look at what they have. Connor's running the ball well. He's at about 4.5 yards per carry. In terms of their receivers, I mean, Deontay Johnson, I think, is going to be the number one guy there going into next year. Yeah. I think he's an elite talent. Chase Claypool brings in a very interesting skill set that you could do a lot of things with. Juju may not be the worldwide receiver that we originally thought he was.
But is a 2 or a 3? If he's not your 1, even if he's your 1A, 2A, 2B, in that conversation, he like that. It just compare their 3 receivers right there to the other side.
Exactly.
Like to the Baltimore side where we're talking about Marquise Brown, Willie Snead, and Des Bryant.
Yeah, and Roethlisberger's completing 67% of his passes, and he's got a 24-5 touchdown to interception ratio. I mean, there's a reason why this team is undefeated. Offensively, they could explode at any moment. Defensively, they just sack the hell out of everybody. They force turnovers, and like we said, look, I love the Steelers in this game. I recognize the fact that they're probably going to get picked off eventually. It's just with everything going on with the Ravens right now, with COVID, with how they've looked, Lamar Jackson has looked terrible the last few weeks. It's just almost impossible to like the Ravens coming into this game.
It is better defense, better offense for Pittsburgh. They're healthier. They're the number 1 defensive DVOA. They're just it's really difficult to be on the Ravens side in here. And a question that's being posed in a lot of places now. Here's what's more likely: Pittsburgh going 16-0 or the Jets going 0-16. And I think Pittsburgh is like 15-16%, and the Jets are like 20%. Actually, have a higher percentage of going 0-16. But if you look at the Pittsburgh schedule, they've got the Ravens, then they've got the Cowboys, the Browns, and then they close with the Jags, the Giants, and the Bengals. So that's Baltimore's schedule. I'm sorry, I was reading the wrong one because I didn't say that the Pittsburgh already played it. So that's what's great, interesting about Baltimore is that this feels like a game in the last couple of weeks feel like okay they're done, but here, Darin, let's say they lose this game and they're 6-5. Okay, Cowboys. They probably win that game still, and they're 7-5. Even if they lose at the Browns and they're 7-6, then they got Jags, Giants, Bengals. They could very easily be a 10-win team, Baltimore, even this version of Baltimore.
They could. I mean,
that's like that schedule is one that up until I wrote down, before we talked, like I didn't realize how easy the rest of their schedule is after Pittsburgh. So as much as you feel like they still could be right in the playoff mix, even though they're not there right now, and they have to worry about the teams that are right in front of them. They have to worry about the Raiders. They have to worry about the Dolphins, who are both 6-4 along with Baltimore. They're behind the Bills, Colts, and Titans, who are all 7-3. So there are 5 or 6 teams all in that same window, and it looks like there's probably going to be 4 maybe of those 6 that make it.
Yeah, I mean, the Jacksonville game is a gimme for them. And the Bengal game with Ryan Finley at quarterback in Week 17.
It's going to be a gimme for everyone now.
Yeah, is a gimme for them also. Look, we'll see what Dallas looks like a couple weeks from now. Cleveland is a good ball club at 7-3. Week 16. I mean, look, if the Giants put together a little run here, and if they get to Week 16 where they've won another 3 or 4 games and are sitting at the top of their division. I don't necessarily know that they have to win that game at MetLife Stadium. So, if they lose this week and go to 6-5, they're going to have an uphill battle because there's some good teams in the AFC that that are going to be ahead of them, including the Browns in their own division. The Dolphins, seemingly are going to be ahead of them as well. whoever doesn't win the division between the Titans and the Colts, the Raiders, are probably going to get to 8 wins in the next couple weeks. It's going to be, if they can fall to 6-5, they're going to have their work cut out for them. And that's hard to believe that we're saying that. When they went into that game against the Chiefs a month ago on Monday Night Football, we were basically saying, all right, well, who's going to be the number 1 seed?
They were a 4-point favorite that game.
Yeah, I know. Crazy.
It's crazy to think about. They were more than a field goal favorite over Mahomes, and it's just how things have fallen for them so quickly. Huge one for them this weekend as they try to knock off the Steelers. And, I mean, Pittsburgh, can you believe they could go to 11-0 here, Pittsburgh? So 3 games, Houston, Detroit, Cowboys, Washington, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and I'll be getting in some of the DFS contests I'm in a couple different. I'm one of the sponsors of That's What G Said. Thrive Fantasy is a really cool site that has a daily fantasy that's built around props. So there'll be a couple contests that I'm getting in, and some of the players that we've mentioned too. But I think in the Cowboys-Washington game, I might lean over that one if you can get 46 or definitely anything under 48 I'm okay with, but I like the 46 number is a good one. And I think I'd be leaning towards the under also with you in the first game. It's up to 51.5 Houston-Detroit, but I don't really have a strong lean on any of these sides in the 3 games.
I'll be honest with you, the strongest lean that I have is the biggest spread. I think Pittsburgh is at least better.
Yeah.
If you said to me, hold my feet to the fire and say, give me one side, I would give you Pittsburgh -5.5. But I mean, looking at the 3 plays, if I'm attacking these 3 games individually, I would take the under in the early game. I would take Washington +3. If it goes to 3.5, I would like Washington.
Sure.
I agree with you. If it goes to 2.5, I would definitely rethink that. And I actually like the over in the night. I think Pittsburgh is going to put up like 35 points.
That seems low. I agree. I know these 2 teams you think of as like rivals. They're going to go back and forth. We don't know what's going to happen, but that seems low. I think so too. I prefer all of the over-unders than I would even more to the sides. I would lean over in that one, 44.5. I would lean over in the Cowboys-Washington 46 and under in the 51.5 in the first one. And I would. Yeah, I think as far as just winning the game straight up too, I'm probably on all the chalky sides. Like I could not play Detroit. Nope. Cowboys Washington, like you said, at the number, I could get convinced if the number were to move one way or the other. I could go either way. And the Ravens, I just can't. I can play. Give me some Andrews maybe, and maybe even throw a Des Bryant on a cheap flyer in a DFS thing. But I can't get excited to play the Ravens right now after what I've seen and throw along all the COVID stuff into the mix.
No, I completely agree with you, 110%. I'll tell you the other game that I think Carolina. I think the bloom will be off. I think Minnesota on Sunday is gonna win going away. I love them -4. I think they've started to figure it out. I know they didn't look great against Dallas, but they're starting to win games. They're finishing games. Carolina's, Bridgewater, even if he plays, he's still got that bum knee. McCaffrey's not playing this week. I don't care about they talk about him practicing. There's no way they're bringing him back on this squad with, a week before the bye. I'd be shocked. So, I really like Minnesota -4 also. That's probably my favorite side of the entire weekend.
Darin Zoccali, the jack of all trades, Darin, who helps us out here with whatever we need. Darin, man, thank you so much again. Very happy Thanksgiving to you and your family. Hope you guys stay safe over there. Have a good time with your loved ones, and I look forward to months into the future. Who knows when one day we can link up somewhere and have a beer and cheers. I definitely owe you a nice beer and a meal because you've done a lot of hard work for That's What G Said over the last year, man. Thank you so much, and stay safe over there.
Hey, listen, it's been my pleasure, and yes, hopefully sometime in the not too distant future we can, get together and travel again. And God bless everybody listening. Stay safe. Have a happy Thanksgiving, as great as you could possibly make it. And everybody be well, and we'll talk to you again next week.
It's Thursday NFL football with Darin Zoccali. Don't go anywhere, folks. We'll be back with more on That's What G Said. Big thank you to Darin there for helping us out with the 3 Thanksgiving games. And just keep in mind, things will change a little bit before the Sunday game, hopefully, fingers crossed, between the Ravens and the Steelers. Maybe some players back from injury for the Ravens, so perhaps things change in that game. We'll talk about it a little bit on the next episode of That's What G Said later in the week. We'll have a little more information, at least when we record late on Friday. So before we get into the rest of Week 12, we have to talk a little bit about Thrive Fantasy, the DFS app that's based around prop betting. And when you use a promo code GINO, when you make a deposit of anything between $20 and $50, so you might as well make it up to $50, you get an instant bonus credit right into your account, matching whatever your deposit is between $20 to $50. Deposit $50, use a promo code GINO, instant $50 right into your account. So this is DFS prop betting. They have major contests for the NFL, NBA, baseball, golf, League of Legends. You can play in head-to-head contests. They have free rolls in there. They have contests that started as low as 25 cents or $1 all the way up to $1,000. NFL Thursday contest, Sunday contest, Monday contest, but the big one, usually the Sunday contest, where they have the $25 entry fee with something around $12,000 in prizes. There's usually around 550 entries or so they're capped. You're not playing against hundreds of thousands or millions of other entries there. First place winner gets $2,700. That's what it was the last couple weeks. And you're going to be picking a lineup where you're picking 10 of their 20 props. You select your lineup based on selecting the over or the under for each of the props available. They also have contests where you're picking who's going to score touchdowns or who will not score touchdowns. Usually that's a $20 entry fee. Thrive Fantasy. Use the promo code GINO and get that instant bonus credit from 20 to 50. Might as well put the 50 in, get the 50 right back. It puts a few bucks in my pocket, makes me look good with one of my sponsors, and gives you plenty of money to go get involved in these Thrive Fantasy contests. Now, on to the rest of Week 12 as we move from Thursday to Sunday. So let's talk about the Browns-Jacksonville here. This game, Browns at the Jags. They're up to 7 in some spots, 6.5, 7. Over-under in this game is 49. Browns are 7-3 now, 4-6 against the spread. The Jags are 1-9, 4-6 against the spread. It looks like it's going to be Mike Glennon starting in this game because remember, the Jags are trying to tank here. They don't want to bring Minshew back because he gives them their best chance to win. No Myles Garrett for the Browns. He's on the COVID list. Now, Minshew was practicing, so that's just something to keep in mind, but Glennon has been named. If for some reason he gets hurt or banged up, they probably would bring Minshew in. Cleveland is a difficult team to get a grasp on right now because they've been playing in so much bad weather. Their last 4 to 5 games have just been games where they haven't even been able to throw the ball, which is beneficial for Cleveland because they run the ball really well. They have a pretty good defensive front. They're pretty good on both sides of the line, actually, offensively and defensively. Will they try to open it up here after not even really having an opportunity to throw in those windy, rainy, crazy games that they've been playing in? A couple injuries here for the Jags. Defensive end Josh Allen, also missing DJ Hayden and Daniel Thomas. Cornerback Denzel Ward is out for the Browns. They're already missing their other starting cornerback, so that may be the reason why the total is high for these two teams. This is really a big game for Cleveland. They're 7-3. They're in the playoffs right now. Coming up, they've got games at Tennessee, Baltimore, and then they have to keep up with Vegas and Miami. Baltimore's right behind them too. Huge game for Cleveland, and I just no real strong opinion here. I can't take Cleveland minus the 7 on the road. The Jags have looked bad. I think Cleveland wins this game, but can't give that many points there. As we move along to Arizona, New England. Arizona is a 2.5-point favorite at New England. The over-under this game is 49.5. Arizona is 6-4 straight up, 5-5 against the spread. New England is 4-6 straight up, 4-6 against the spread. Now, New England's not good. I like this spot for them. Keep in mind, Arizona does have a few extra days. They played the Thursday night game last week. But look at their last 4 games. They beat Seattle 37-34 in an overtime game, where they never led until they won the game. They lost to Miami. They beat Buffalo on the Hail Mary, and they came back and lost to Seattle. They could be 0-4 in their last 4 games. They do pose a bad matchup for the Patriots, as we saw last week. New England has not been good with running Patriots for a while, really throughout the Belichick era. A lot of the times are with running quarterbacks. Any quarterback that can move give the Pats and gives Belichick really a little bit of trouble. I just like this spot, though. I don't know, especially if it floats up to 3. So that's the number I'm waiting for there with New England. If this thing floats up to +3 for New England, I'm taking them. From a coaching perspective, it feels like a mismatch, though, even though I said Belichick doesn't do well against a running quarterback. From just a head coach versus head coach here, Cliff Kingsbury is a very good play caller. I think he's a very good offensive mind, but he's not good when it comes to making important decisions, whether to kick, whether to go for it on 4th down. And he gets really like tight play calling. Sean McVay does this a little bit too, as they get closer and closer to scoring, which seems so weird. I'm going to wait for this to get to 3, but I like New England in here. I'm going to probably play a little New England money line in this one. We move to the Vikings versus the Panthers. This game is around 4 right now. Vikings -4 against the Panthers, over under 48.5. Vikings 4-6 straight up, 6-4 against the spread. Panthers 4-7 straight up, 6-5 against the spread. Looks like Bridgewater is going to be back in here. He's going to be playing against his old team. Still no McCaffrey for the Panthers, and they're coming off a big 20-0 win where they shut out the Lions with their backup quarterback starting. The Vikings come off of a loss to Dallas. This is a game I'm staying away from. I've gone back and forth on Carolina all year long. They're just a tough team for me to get a gauge for. Every time I think they're good, they lay an egg, and then I start to think they're not good, and they come back with a couple good performances. So if the total gets to 48, I would play over in here. It's at 48.5 right now. I think these two teams will score against each other. The Vikings have a terrible secondary. The Carolina Panthers have a nice set of wide receivers. And with Teddy back, I think he should be able to pick on that secondary a little bit. Keep in mind, Thielen does have a COVID positive test. Then it was negative, so monitor if he's going to be playing or not. I don't like the 4 here with the Vikings. I do think they probably win this game, but I'm more focused on that total. If we can get it around 40, if we can get it at 48, I'll go over there. One of the games I really like this week is the Raiders and the Falcons here. It's the Falcons plus the 3. So Raiders are a 3-point favorite on the road at Atlanta, over under 55.5 in here. Raiders 6-4 straight up, 7-3 against the spread. Falcons 3-7 straight up, 4-6 against the spread. You got the Raiders coming off of a heartbreaking defeat where they looked so good on Sunday night when they were playing against the Chiefs and Mahomes. They already beat the Chiefs one time this year. They looked like they were going to beat them both times this year, and now they have to go after the Sunday night game. They got to go travel and play early against an Atlanta team that we just saw against New Orleans, and they didn't look that great. But keep in mind, Atlanta was up early in that game. They kicked 3 field goals. Imagine if instead of being up 9-3 or up 21-3, or even scoring 2 touchdowns instead of just 3 field goals there early on, they weren't able to get into the end zone. They let Hill and then the Saints, Taysom Hill, hang around and get comfortable. And then the offense started to groove for the Saints, and the Saints' defense is really improved. That's a Saints' defense that is much, much better than this Raiders' defense, in a really bad spot for the Raiders. Yeah, they're number 23 in defensive DVOA. The Saints they're number 24, the Raiders. The Saints are number 3. Atlanta back home. Tough spot for the Raiders. Give me the Falcons, but you need to take the +3. I'd also sprinkle a little money line there on the Falcons. I think they're going to show up with a good performance, and I think it's just going to be a tough spot for the Raiders. Dolphins, Jets. I'm tempted to play the Jets here. I just don't think I can. The Dolphins are a 7-point favorite on the road playing the Jets. Over-under in this game is 44.5, so the Dolphins are 6-4 straight up, 7-3 against the spread. Jets 0-10 straight up, 3-7 against the spread. Is Sam Darnold going to be playing in here? He is hopeful to play. What will the mindset be of Tua, the quarterback for the Dolphins, who was benched last week? Wasn't taken out because of an injury. He was benched, just taken out because of poor play. Now, the question asked, Do you bench him? Right? You bring him in because you say you're going to make the change because you feel like this is what's best for your team to win. Is it right to bench him immediately as soon as things go wrong? We're talking about a one-score game. They weren't down by 20, 25 points in here. This was still a tight game. He was just struggling. They bring in Fitzpatrick, who looked much better. But what does this say to the locker room when you start going back and forth with a high pick, when everybody was already sort of raising eyebrows at the timing of making the Tua change? Now, they were successful with Tua, but when you break down each of the games individually, it wasn't really because of Tua. There were reasons, we've talked about it over the last few weeks, that were sort of unsustainable for Miami. They're scoring all these defensive touchdowns. They were getting great position, field of position every single time they were starting. It's just things that don't continue to happen for you each and every week. And so when things get difficult, what was going to happen with Miami? And we saw last week, was that just one game? Did they struggle? I don't think they're going to lose this game to the Jets, but I think it could be close here. Are they going to keep getting those defensive scores? Remember, this is a divisional road game. That loss at Denver could hurt their playoff chances. This is a stay away for me. Giants are now -5.5 playing against Cincy. They're 5.5 favorites on the road against the Bengals. It's going to be Brandon Allen starting here. Unfortunately, the Joe Burrow injury was just such a bummer for a guy who has looked so good. The Giants 3-7 straight up, 7-3 against the spread. Cincy 2-7-1 straight up, 6-4 against the spread. And I mean, just should the Giants be this big of a road favorite against anyone? They are coming off a bye. This is just a total stay away for me, and a game that I'm just bummed out about as a football fan, because Joe Burrow looked really, really good. He was doing this with no offensive line all year. He was getting banged up over and over again, and he's going to be out for a while now. We know the rest of the year this could be a devastating injury, ACL, MCL, but bummer to see one of the young stars go down early on. We move along to Bills-Chargers. Bills -5.5. They're playing the Chargers. Over-under in this game is 53.5. And remember, all the Chargers do is play one-score games. They are whether they win, whether they lose, they're always involved in tight games. It feels like they're both going to score in this game. The Bills 7-3 straight up, 5-5 against the spread. Chargers 3-7 straight up, 5-5 against the spread. Last 7 Charger games all went over. The last 10 Bills games, the over is 8-2. And the over-under in this game is 53.5. So let's look at the Bills' 3 losses. They lost in a game that was the Tuesday game at Tennessee that got delayed. And then they lost later that week to Kansas City. And their other loss was in the Hail Mary to Arizona. They've got wins over the Rams, the Seahawks, the Raiders, and the Dolphins. The Bills are a good team. They're coming off the bye right now. Got to give it up for Herbert. He just continues to look unbelievable each and every week. He's going to have incredible numbers by the end of the year. He's going to break a ton of rookie records. Big game for the Bills. They're right in the mix there with the AFC playoff teams. They're in the hunt right now. 3 of their next 4 games are on the road, and the only game they have in that mix at home is against Pittsburgh. They got a tough little stretch coming up here. Got to get the job done against the Chargers, against a team that you're better than, and a team that is not all that well coached, and a team that likes to make mistakes. You cannot lay an egg here to the Chargers. Colts, Titans. I'm a big Colts fan overall. I don't really, and I think they're going to win this game. I don't love the number at -3.5. The Colts are a 3.5-point favorite against the Titans. Over under in this game, 51. Colts are 7-3 straight up, 6-4 against the spread. Titans 7-3 straight up, 4-6 against the spread. Colts won this game a few weeks ago when they played 34-17. Colts have the number 5 defense in DVOA. Titans have the number 3 offense. So the number 3 offense of the Titans, number 5 defense of the Colts. Linebacker Jaylen Brown out for the year for the Titans. It's the same, though, as a few weeks ago. I just don't know if defensively they have both the coverage and the personnel on the front, on the defensive front, to put the pressure on Rivers. Michael Pittman Jr. is starting to come to life as a big play threat there for the Colts. And remember, the Titans won last week, but the Ravens blew a 10-point lead. I think that was a lot more about the Titans. These are two very good coaches. I find myself always wanting to play against the Titans because you watch their games and they have a good and efficient offense, but defensively they're really bad. And when you watch them, they are so beatable. They could have 3 or 4 more losses this year. Denver, the Jags, the Texans, the Ravens, the Vikings, all are games that the Titans could have lost. But because of their coach, he sort of picks them up. Really, really good coach. I love both of the coaches here for the Colts and the Titans. We move on to the Rams 49ers. Rams 49ers. Now, we have the Rams as a 7-point favorite against the 49ers, and this one over-under is 45. Rams are 7-3 straight up. They are 4-5 against the spread. The 49ers are 4-6. They're 4-6 against the spread also. But they're off the bye, and they're getting healthy. They might have Deebo Samuel, Mostert, Tevin Coleman. They could all be back. They have some guys that are on the COVID list that could also be back. This is a team that's had a bad year with a lot of injuries. They would love to spoil the feel-good Rams right now, who are flying high off of a couple big victories. But remember, the Rams are coming off a big win off of a short week. And remember, Tampa had the ball with the opportunity late to win the game or to tie it. And Brady, he really just threw it away. He threw the game away. I like the 49ers in here at +7. It could get up to 7.5, but at 7.5, I think this game could be close, and I think the 49ers have a shot here to kind of catch the Rams napping a little bit coming off a big win and maybe take the 49ers a little for granted with thinking they're going to be beat up. Saints -5.5 at the Broncos. Over-under in this game, 43.5. Saints are 8-2 straight up, 5-5 against the spread. Broncos 4-6 straight up, 6-4 against the spread. The Saints with Taysom Hill now, who played well, but keep in mind, this is going to be a different story. You head to play Denver, a much better defense after you beat Atlanta. You play the number 9 defense in DVOA in a tough place to play. Now there's some film on you as an actual quarterback for a full game. They can see some of your tendencies. Denver is not bad. They're just inconsistent offensively is really Denver's problem. Atlanta had to kick all those field goals. They let the Saints hang around early. Julio Jones was in and out. Kamara didn't really play well with Hill. It sort of looked like it took Kamara out of the game a little bit. I don't know if this is a great spot for the Saints here. If this thing floats up to 6, I definitely jump on the Broncos side, and I still might play it at 5.5, but keep an eye. If it's floating to 6, we'll jump on the Broncos here. Chiefs, Tampa. Chiefs are a 3.5-point favorite heading to Tampa over under 56, and this is a classic case of what did we just see last? We all just saw Mahomes and the Chiefs come back and win on Sunday Night Football. We all just saw Tom Brady and Tampa look a little old late and lose against the Rams. Chiefs are 9-1 straight up, 6-4 against the spread. Tampa is 7-4 straight up, 5-6 against the spread. The Chiefs' defense is not that great. They don't have anyone to put the pressure on Brady like Donald was. They don't have the type of coverage that the Rams have. I think Tampa's going to be able to go up and down a little bit more on the Chiefs. And not even more. The Raiders were able to do so too, but I think Tampa will be able to score. The only issue is that Tampa sort of looks ready for their bye week. Keep in mind, they have not had a bye yet. They've got 11 games played, while most teams in the league have only played 10. And Arians, there's this weird Arians and Brady stuff going on. He's been throwing Brady under the bus, talking about how he's just missing coverage, and he's not doing that in practice, but he's missing them in the games. So we got this Kansas City team that is your number 1 in offensive DVOA, and they're number 14 in defense. Tampa, number 8 in offensive DVOA, number 2 in defense. So we got the number 1 offense versus the number 2 defense. Tampa's not bad. I think people Every time Tom Brady loses, they want to say it's the end of the world and he's done. But keep in mind, these are his 4 losses this year. They lost to the Saints twice, the Rams, and the Bears by a point. They had the ball down 3 against the Rams on their own 38 with 2 minutes left, with a very, very high chance to at least kick a field goal, and they turned the ball over. 2 games remaining in Week 12. We'll talk a lot more about these on the Friday episode too. It's the Packers minus 8.5 against the Bears. Over/under in this game is 45. Packers 7-3 straight up, 6-4 against the spread. Bears 5-5 straight up, 5-5 against the spread. 8.5 just feels like a lot, especially for a game that could have bad weather here. If that's the case, and it's going to be a low over/under, which only is 45, then more than a touchdown, every point matters so much more when the total is low. So this is a game I'm going to keep an eye on. We'll see what the weather is like, but I can't go to if it's a weather game where the passing attack of the Packers is neutralized a little bit, then the Bears, if they don't have to throw the ball as much, they may not be as far behind, right? And their defense should be able to at least slow the Packers down somewhat. So, I obviously feel like I'm leaning to the Bears, but I got to see more about this. This isn't a game I'm going to be playing. Seattle -5 at the Eagles, over/under 50. This is the Monday night game. Talk about weird stuff between the quarterback and the coach. We've got it going on in Tampa with Arians and with Brady. We've got it going on here in the Eagles with Dougie talking about Wentz. He doesn't know if he's playing. It's so strange interaction with the reporter. Is he our starter? I don't know. As of today, today's only Wednesday. We're not sure. Maybe Sunday, Monday. Well, I guess it was bizarre. So we get the 7-3 Eagles, 6-4, or the 7-3 Seahawks, 6-4 against the spread. The 3-6-1 straight up Eagles, 3-7 against the spread. They've got Seattle's got the extra time off. They had the Thursday night game that they won. The Eagles are only half of a game up in this division right now. And so the Eagles play this game against Seattle. Then they play at Green Bay. They play at the Saints, at Arizona, at Dallas, and Washington. They could lose their next 4 games and then have the 2 division games left. The Eagles are in some big trouble here. Big trouble here as Wentz leads the league in sacks, fumbles, and interceptions thrown. We will get more into it and give out some overall official picks on the Friday show, but some of the games that we're given a look to initially, keep an eye on the Broncos. We'll be looking at the Tampa Chiefs game a little bit. That's a number that we're looking to. Atlanta is definitely a game that we're going to be playing a little bit there too, as some games we'll be looking at, and we'll see what the numbers move up to in the next couple of days. Anything else? Yeah, let's see. And then the Patriots. Patriots was the other one. Patriots and Falcons, probably the two that I'm the most intrigued by so far coming up this week. That is in the NFL. We're going to move on over from the NFL to the NBA and talk about all of the big moves in the NBA. So let's start up alphabetically. We'll go from top to bottom, and then I'm going to break down the rosters that I'm really intrigued by. So Atlanta with some big acquisitions for the Hawks. This team is going to look a lot different this year. They add Gallinari, Bogdanovich, Rondo, Chris Dunn, and Okongwu. This team, we'll talk about them a little bit more. Very, very intriguing team. The Boston Celtics, I mean, they didn't do a whole ton. Added Tristan Thompson, Jeff Teague, a couple of draft picks there for Boston, Nesmith and Peyton Pritchard, Yam Madar. They're still working on the sign and trade to see if they can get something back for losing out on Gordon Hayward. The Brooklyn Nets didn't do a whole lot. Jeff Green, Bruce Brown, Landry Shamet, one of their draft picks. We know this team was really interested in James Harden, but were not able to work out a deal to get Harden. Charlotte Hornets are going to look different. LaMelo Ball, they drafted. They also signed Gordon Hayward to a big deal. We'll break down their roster in just a bit. The Bulls drafted Patrick Williams, added Garrett Temple in free agency. Didn't really do a whole lot else. The Cavaliers were pretty quiet. They absorbed JaVale McGee in a trade. They re-signed Matthew Dellavedova. They signed Damian Dotson, or they got Damian Dotson via trade, and they drafted Okoro 5th overall. Let's see here. The Mavs, they got Josh Richardson, which is good. They also got James Johnson. So a couple nice moves. They were able to flip Curry into Richardson, who should be a really nice fit for them. Not bad for Dallas there. Didn't like Denver. They lost out on Jeremy Grant, Mason Plumlee, Torrey Craig. Jeremy Grant was really good for them last year, and he just wanted a bigger role elsewhere. So they bring in JaMychal Green, and they just don't look like they got a whole lot better. Detroit was just doing some weird stuff. They have so many bigs that they were involved with. They had a lot of early draft picks, Killian Hayes, Isaiah Stewart, Bay, Savin Lee. They were able to get Dylan Wright and Musa, Magruder, Dedman, who I believe they waived after. They did get Jeremy Grant, Mason Plumlee, Jaleel Okafor, and Josh Jackson. So a lot of bigs on this team. One of the rosters we'll talk about. The Warriors, unfortunately, the Klay Thompson news, we know he's hurt, done for the year. They drafted James Wiseman. They did get Kelly Oubre, were able to get him via trade, and Kent Bazemore. So, the Warriors, they go from a team that felt like they were a legitimate title contender to, maybe fringe playoff team. Houston, no idea what they're doing over there. They did get Christian Wood, Tate, and they did sign DeMarcus Cousins. They also brought in one of their draft picks, Kenyon Martin Jr., but they lost Covington, Jeff Green, and Austin Rivers as a couple of their rotation players. Pacers did almost nothing. Indiana Pacers, just one of their draft picks. Clippers did add Serge Ibaka, Luke Kennard, but they lost Landry Shamet, Montrezl Harrell, and JaMychal Green, Reggie Jackson, who were all playing big roles for them and were all part of the rotation. We got the Lakers, who they did a great job. They really did. They added Montrezl Harrell, Wesley Matthews, Markieff Morris, Dennis Schroeder, and Mark Gasol, and re-signed KCP. They did a really, really good job. They lost Danny Green, JaVale McGee, Rondo, Avery Bradley, Dwight Howard, who are not going to be small losses for them, but it feels like they upgraded in a lot of different spots. Memphis didn't do a whole lot, just some of their draft picks. They acquired Mario Hezonja via a trade. The Miami Heat made a draft pick of Precious Achiuwa. They also brought in Mo Harkless and Avery Bradley, and they got rid of Jay Crowder. But Miami, they should be solid. The Bucks, big trade for Drew Holiday. We talked about that a lot last week. DJ Augustine they brought in, Bobby Portis. They brought in Jalen Adams. They lose Bledsoe, Hill, Wesley Matthews, Robin Lopez, Kyle Korver, Ilyasova, Williams. That's a lot of guys who were in the mix for them, though, last year. The T-Wolves, they brought back Ricky Rubio. They have brought in Juancho Hernan-Gomez. And the number 1 draft pick, Anthony Edwards. They brought in Leandro Bolmaro and Jaden McDaniels. Pelicans brought in Steven Adams and Eric Bledsoe, drafted Kiro Lewis Jr., Willie Hernan-Gomez, Wayne Gabriel, and Thornwell are in the mix for them. The Knicks didn't do a whole lot. Rumored for Hayward, rumored for Westbrook, and then the Knicks end up being really quiet. They bring in Alec Burks, Nerlens Noel, Austin Rivers, and they draft Obi Toppin, who they're super high on. They also got Amari Spellman and Jacob Evans via a trade. The Thunder are a team that's so difficult to keep tabs on. They drafted Podziemski, Theo Meladon, and Krejic. They brought in Horford, Ty Jerome, Leck, Poirier, Ariza, Justin Jackson, George Hill, Darius Miller, TJ Leaf. I think their roster looks something like this with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Al Horford, Darius Baisley, Mike Muscala, Ty Jerome, Lou Dort, and Pojevsky. I think it's something like that. The Magic didn't do a whole lot. They drafted Cole Anthony. They brought in Dwayne Bacon. Philly, they did quite a bit, and I like what Philly did with their roster. A couple draft picks. Then you bring in Danny Green, Terrence Ferguson, Seth Curry, Tony Bradley. So you got a couple shooters to spread things out. You also bring in Dwight Howard. So now you got a couple bigs to help back up the bigs. They just feel like a team that fits a lot better this year. Phoenix Suns, they bring in Jalen Smith, the 10th pick. Chris Paul on the trade, Abel Nadir, Jay Crowder, which I liked. And then they get Etwan Moore and Dario Saric, which would really help their bench quite a bit. Really high on Portland and Phoenix too. We get to Portland, they bring in Robert Covington via a trade, and as Cantor comes in, Derek Jones Jr. So you add them to, hopefully, you bring back Melo, and hopefully Collins is healthy for you. This team looks a lot deeper than they were last year. The Kings just added Whiteside. They drafted Halliburton, Woodward, and Ramsey. A lot of people are high on Halliburton, but their big move was maxing out Fox recently. Really quiet Spurs did basically nothing, just their draft picks. The Raptors lost out on a couple big pieces, but they did draft Flynn and Harris, 29th and 59th pick overall. They brought in Aaron Baines, re-signed Boucher, brought in DeAndre Bembry and Alex Len, but they lost Ibaka and Gasol, which should be big losses for them. Not a whole lot from the Jazz. They re-signed, or they brought back Derek Favors, and they have the 27th and 39th picks that they drafted. The Wizards, just their draft picks, they brought in Anthony Gill, Robin Lopez, and Raul Neto, so not a lot on the Wizards front. We heard a lot of rumors about John Wall, but nothing from Wall, nothing from Westbrook, nothing from Harden. They all are where they were just a few weeks ago. So let's talk about the teams that I'm most intrigued by, either in the positive way or a negative way. Let's talk about the positive ones first. We'll start with the Lakers, and obviously I'm a big Laker fan. I think if you ask around, everyone will say they really love what the Lakers did, because they continue on this, giving them so much versatility. That's what's amazing about Anthony Davis, with a big like that who can stretch the floor, but who's so good defensively and couldn't be such a defensive anchor for you down low. There's so few players in the league that are like that. And so with him, they can do so many different things. The Lakers are going to probably have a starting lineup that'll be Anthony Davis, Marc Gasol, LeBron James, Wesley Matthews Jr., and KCP. They'll have Schroeder, Caruso, Kuzma, Markieff Morris, and Montrezl Harrell coming off the bench, with Talen Horton-Tucker, who's going to get a lot more run this year too. I mean, that's 11 deep for the Lakers. They look even better than they were last year. Now keep in mind, Gasol I think he's going to start, and I think you keep Schroeder on the bench, mainly because you look at this roster, the one thing they still may be lacking a little bit is what? Ball handlers. They have two, because their guards, Wes Matthews, he's not a point guard really. KCP, he's not a point guard or a ball handler type. Caruso, he can play point guard, but we've seen that's one of his weaknesses really, is kind of sort of setting up the offense. And so it's really Schroeder and LeBron as the two ball handlers. I think you separate those two early, and then they can close the game out together. That way, when LeBron needs to come out, Schroeder can run the show there, and you always have one of your better ball handlers on the floor. I think you start with Marc Gasol big, and you probably end up finishing with AD as your 5, unless you're playing against a bigger team or Mark's playing well. Think about how many different combinations they can close games out with. I mean, it'll probably be LeBron, AD, and Schroeder, and then who? I mean, Wes Matthews, KCP, Caruso, Kuzma, Markieff, Montrez. I mean, any combinations of them that are playing well. Ooh, I'm excited. I'm excited for the Portland Trailblazers. Lillard, CJ McCollum, Rodney Hood, Covington, and Nurkic. They're going to have Carmelo, Gary Trent Jr., Simons, Cantor, Derek Jones Jr., Zach Collins, and Harry Giles. It's a good, deep roster. That is their, like, the best of their last 2 years of teams put together. To me, that's a top 5 team in the West, if healthy. I like the Atlanta Hawks. We're talking Trae Young, Cam Reddish, DeAndre Hunter, John Collins, Clint Capella. Now we got Gallinari, Bogdanovich. You got the veteran presence of Rondo, just as a backup point guard. Chris Dunn, Kevin Huerter, and Okongwu. That's a good squad. 76ers, they look much better on paper to me. Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, Tobias Harris, Seth Curry, Danny Green. Then you got Dwight Howard. You got Zaire Smith, Tybal, Shake Milton, Cormans. They probably need a little bit of help on the bench, or we'll see how they set things up. But they're still probably a little bit of help with the depth. But as far as what their starting lineup looks like, with Simmons, Embiid, Harris, Curry, Danny Green, is that it? Is Ben Simmons the point guard? Is that how they... Maybe. How about the Suns? Many people high on the Suns in this roster, with Chris Paul now, Devin Booker, Mikal Bridges, Jay Crowder, and DeAndre Ayton. A bench of Galloway, Langston Galloway, Etwan Moore, Cameron Johnson, Dario Saric, Jalen Smith, Payne. This is a good-looking roster. I think those are my 5 favorite teams. I don't think they're the 5 best teams in the league, but as far as what I like in the offseason, the moves that the teams made as far as improving their teams, I think Lakers, Portland, Atlanta, Philly, and the Suns. Other teams, okay, the team that I'm scratching my head on is the Pistons. They got Blake Griffin, Derrick Rose, Svi Mikhailuk, Demboya. Then they got their 3 draft picks, Killian Hayes, Stuart Bay. They paid Jeremy Grant a ton of money. They paid Mason Plumlee to come, Jahlil Okafor. They have Delon Wright and Josh Jackson. I don't know. Seems like a weird roster. The Charlotte roster is going to be better. It's going to be Terry Rozier, Devontae Graham, Gordon Hayward, P.J. Washington, Cody Zeller, LaMelo Ball, Miles Bridges, Malik Monk, and Bismack Biyombo. That's a good squad. That's a squad with a healthy Hayward that is a team that could battle for a bottom playoff spot. You got the Pelicans roster now with Lonzo, Eric Bledsoe, Brandon Ingram, Zion, Steven Adams, J.J. Redick, Josh Hart, Kira Lewis, Nico Melli, and Alexander Walker. It's an interesting roster. It's all going to depend for them on Zion. Can he continue to take steps? Brandon Ingram got the big payout. Shout out to Brandon. Big money, B.I. Yeah, everyone else, other thoughts. The Bucks, they messed up that Bogdanovich trade. Toronto, they did bring back Van Fleet, but losing Ibaka, Gasol could hurt. Boston, we'll see what they can do with Hayward if they can turn that into a sign and trade. They were able to extend Tatum. Indy couldn't trade Oladipo. The Heat were able to recently extend Bam. They signed Dragic, and then they brought in Avery and Harkless. The Nets, KD, Kyrie, Joe Harris. We'll see what they look like with them. They were able to sign Harris for big money. No Hayward, no Russ for the Knicks. Denver losing out on Jeremy Grant. The Clippers losing out on Trez, JaMychal, and Shamet. They do pay Morris 4 years, $64 million. Felt like a lot for Morris when the Lakers get the Morris twin at the minimum. And then the Warriors, is it going to be good enough with Curry, Draymond, Oubre Jr., Wiseman, Wiggins? Is that enough for them to be a playoff team, to be a team that can really legitimately contend for a title? We are less than a month away from the start of the NBA season. We're only a few weeks away from training camp. We're going to be talking about NBA each and every week here on That's What G Said. One of the longtime sponsors of That's What G Said is Cindy Carava, Full Service Realtor. Her website is cindycarava.com, CindyCarava.com. She can help you out with anything you need as a full service realtor. Selling, purchasing, leasing. She can help you find vendors like handyman, painters, and landscapers. She can connect you and help you get pre-approved for a home loan. She covers all parts of the San Gabriel Valley, North San Diego County, Del Mar, Solana Beach, Rancho Santa Fe, and right now she's even offering you a Black Friday sale. So check this out. If you list, purchase, or refi your home with Cindy Carava by December the 31st, she will compensate you for up to $1,500 for services, including appraisal, physical inspection, and home warranty. She wants to get you and your family into a new home this holiday season. For more information, give her a call, 626-394-6400. That is Cindy Carava website, cindycarava.com. Make sure to let her know that Gino sent you. Up next, the weekend in Stable Duel. This is, to me, always a really underrated, personal favorite racing weekend of mine. This Thanksgiving weekend. I mentioned at the very beginning of the show how many stakes races there are at a couple different tracks over the next few days. We're going to be talking about a bunch of them here on That's What G Said. And Stable Duel, who is now accepting credit and debit card deposits. Awesome. More ways for you to deposit and get involved. Stable Duel contest. Real quick, what is Stable Duel for those of you who don't know? Stable Duel is an app that has daily horse racing contests where you create lineups based on selecting horses from a certain racetrack and their races that are running. So, for example, on Thursday, you can play, and you're going to be playing contests that are comprised of the Laurel Park races. On Thursday, the contest is $25 to get in, and if you finish in the top 40%, you will triple your money. From 25, turn it into 75. At Del Mar, they have a free ride Thanksgiving contest as a Thanksgiving special to all the fans. Free to enter with $1,000 in prizes. Check that out. They also have a $100 Del Mar Top 10 contest and a $10 entry at Charlestown. On Friday, it's day 3 of the Delta Turkey Bowl. What does this mean? All of the first 3 days, whatever the pools are, Stable Duel will be matching half of that pool and then putting it into the final pool on Saturday, which is day 4 of the Delta Turkey Bowl. And so that Saturday pool is going to be huge. What does that mean? We want to play in the pool on Friday to build the Saturday pool up, and the Friday pool still pays out all their normal prizes. It's a $50 entry fee, normal payouts. It's just a way to build up the pool to force Stable Duel to pay even more and put more into the Saturday pool. They have Del Mar contest on Friday for $5 and then a $100 top 10. There's a Penn National contest, a $25 double up. On Saturday, the big one, the Del Mar $10,000 Invitational. A $100 entry to get into this contest with $10,000 in prizes. Yes, $10,000 in prizes. We are going to have a special show. That's what G said. To cover the Del Mar Saturday and focus on the big contest on Saturday at Del Mar and at Delta Downs. Special show coming out just to focus on those contests alone. Del Mar and Delta Downs, because it's the Turkey Bowl finale, a $50 entry. Half of each of the Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday pools will all be put together in the Saturday pool. There's going to be at least $1,700 in prizes there. There's also a Tampa $25 triple up contest on Saturday. Then on Sunday, Laurel has a $25 triple up. Del Mar has a $10 contest and a $50 top 10. That's your next 4 days at Stable Duel, just loaded with contests and different opportunities for us as we jump right into the week in horse racing. I'm going to start at Churchill Downs. I'm going to start on Thursday, Thanksgiving at Churchill Downs. So get those past performances out for Thursday, the 26th. And let's go to Churchill. We're going to start with race number 2. This one isn't necessarily a horse I'm going to be playing to win. Maybe just one to throw into some of your early exotics. That's the 1, Ransack, who it feels like this is just a good spot dropping back down for him. I'm a little concerned about the rail, but I think the trip, the distance should hit him right between the eyes, and I'm expecting a good effort from Ransack. Anything around 8-1 or so feels like what he should be. Throw him into your early pick 4s or pick 5s. We move on to race number 3 at Churchill. I like the 2, More is More. Feels like going long for her is what she wants to do and what she will be doing well. The 2 horses right next to her should be flashing a little bit of speed. I think Miss Deputy Star, I think Bold Article will both be flashing a little bit of pace in here, and she should be tracking right behind them. maybe sitting in third, stretching back out. She was a winner going a mile over this racetrack, 2 starts back, and now she'll try to stretch it to a mile and a 16th. Doesn't feel like it should be any issue for her whatsoever. The last race, I'm not worried about it. It's a 6.5 furlong race. To stretch back out to a mile and a 16th is what she wants. Toss her first race sprinting on the turf, toss her last race sprinting. She wants to go longer. More is more. The number 2 will make a win wager if we can get anything around 5-1. We move on to race number 5 on Friday, and I'm looking at the one good penny in here. There just is not much other pace. This filly's going to drop. She's got the inside draw. She's got experience. She's going to be either on the lead, I think, or sitting second in here. Her last start, from the inside, she just didn't get away cleanly, and she's shown speed going the mile at Churchill Downs and at Ellis Park. She was right up on the lead, and her races when she showed speed were her best efforts. That has to be the game plan with her in this spot. Let's send and try to secure a really nice spot from the rail. I think she'll be forwardly placed either on the lead or sitting really close. Good penny. Anything around 7-2 will make a win wager on good penny. As we move to the 7th race with the number 2, Anoush, whose debut was good. She was 4th that day. It was a slowish start. She was 10th of 11 early on, and she was stuck down inside. She was about 10 lengths off. She started to move really well, and she was right up onto the heels of a rival. She had to angle around. She closed really well for 4th. She sort of flattened out late, but then had a nice gallop out. So she feels like one that will appreciate additional real estate in here. The number 2, Anoush, anything around 5-2 will make a win wager on the 2 in race number 7 at Churchill. We go to the 8th race. I'm looking at the number 8 in here. That is Charming Lady. So last time out, she had the inside trip, and she got the shuffle. She lost a few lengths. She kept inside, and she came on again late. She had a brutal trip. And 7 furlongs is a distance that seems like it should be very, very good for her. I think she's going to end up sitting a really nice third. She was just farther back and ended up getting caught in between, and it just was not a good trip last time out. If she's anything over 5-1, around 6-1, I'm playing her to win. The number 8 in race number 8, Charming Lady. Moving to the 9th in here, nothing too crazy or outside the box. I do think Tough Love is the one to beat. The 12 Chewing Gum would be the price horse that I would be willing to throw into some of the exotics, and the 6 Rubus will probably be tough to leave out of a lot of the exotics. So those would be the 3 for me: 11, 12, 6 in race number 9, and then in the 10th race, which is the Falls City, I'm going to our Super Freak. She had a slow start and she couldn't get close up. And that's where she wants to be. Her best races are when she's right on the lead, forwardly placed, or sitting close. I think she's going to send hard today. Look around in here. Where else is the pace coming from? There's not a ton of it. If somebody wants to go, I think our Super Freak will break well and just end up sitting second in here. But she gets the lead. I think our Super Freak. That's the number 5 in race number 10. Anything around 7-2 will make a win wager on her. So horses that I'm looking at in race number 2, throw the 1 into your pick 5. In the 3rd, the number 2, More is More. In the 5th, the number 1, Good Penny. In the 7th, the 2, Anoush. In the 8th, the 8, Charming Lady. In the 9th, I have 11 with 2-6. And in the 10th, the number 5, our Super Freak. That is Churchill Thursday, Thanksgiving. Let's flip over to Del Mar for Thursday, November the 26th. And keep in mind, Del Mar has that free ride Stable Duel contest. Just download the Stable Duel app, create your stable, create your entry, and you can get in for free. $1,000 in prizes. They also have a top 10 contest. It's a $100 entry fee to get in, and you have to pick a lineup based on 10 horses throughout the 9 races. The 8 races for Friday now I'm all over the place. The 8 races for Del Mar. Thursday, we're talking Thursday, Thanksgiving, Del Mar 8 race card. So let's go to race number 2. That's going to be my first play for Thursday. It's going to be the 2 Mamba Cool, who puts the blinkers on. He's going to sit in a really good spot. He sat third, about 3 lengths off behind 2 horses that were battling last time out. I think he adds the blinkers in here, and instead of sitting, the trip is going to be send hard. There's not a lot of other speed. Down towards the inside is Mamba Cool. Going to go early. Anything around 4-1. Let's make a win wager on the deuce. Mamba Cool. He's definitely a horse that I feel like will get bet. So he's probably one you want to use in your stable dual lineups too, because you want these horses that get bet down from their morning lines, because then you're getting a horse who is a 4-1 shot that you paid for, like an 8-1 shot. So that may be the case with Mamba Cool. Anything around 4-1 will make a win wager. In the third race, the number 8, Secret Courier, will be a horse who is my top selection in a lot of my tickets in here. He is going to go second start off the bench, and in his last start, going 6 furlongs, he was tracking from third. He was about 4 lengths off in the 2 path. The winner was able to clear off early. Secret Courier loomed up. He got within a couple lengths, and he was battling for the minor awards. Now he's going to go second start off the bench, stretches out. He should get the lead in here. A couple of the races he's coming out of have become very productive, where the horses that have beat him have come back and won next out. I like Secret Courier at anything around 7-2 will make a win wager in race number 3. We move along to race number 4, and I'm looking at the 6 in here, Awesome Drive. This filly was in her most recent start tracking inside, and then she was immediately in tight. She was settling in between horses about 3 lengths off. She's chasing Lone Speed Unicorn, and Awesome Drive was stuck inside, was in the 2 path, and she had nowhere to go until it was, too late. Sneaky effort. You don't really see the trouble that Awesome Drive had to deal with. Anything around 5-1 or so, we're going to make a win wager on Awesome Drive, the number 6 in race number 4. Let's move to race number 6 here. It is the stakes race, and I'm looking at one of the shippers here. I'm looking at Blame Debbie. If she is anything around 5-2, I'll make a win wager. And to me, the number 8, Blame Debbie, looks like a late exotic single. If you're playing any of the late exotics here, she is sharp. She's crossed the wire 3 straight times. One of them she was DQ'd, but she's shown so much versatility. She can sit close. She can come from off the pace. She can pass horses. She comes in for motion, and I think she's going to be really tough in this spot. That's the number 8, Blame Debbie. In race number 7, I'm looking at the number 8, Call You Tomorrow. Call You Tomorrow is a horse who I think on the drop in class is just going to end up falling into a better spot against this softer group. Ran into a sharp horse last time out, and this is not a strong group. So Call You Tomorrow, I think will fall into a really nice trip here, sitting, just a couple lengths off. Anything around 3-1 or so seems fair on Call You Tomorrow. In the second race, the number 2, Mamba Cool. In the third, the number 8, Secret Courier. In the fourth, the number 6, Awesome Drive. In the sixth, the number 8, Blame Debbie. And in the seventh, the number 8, Call You Tomorrow. That is Thursday over at Del Mar. Holiday season is the perfect time to check out our friends over at CeraCandles.com, CERA Candles.com. Use that promo code GINO. It'll get sent off your purchase there. So these are all natural, clean-burning, high-quality candles. None of those toxins or carcinogens or pollutants that you get in some of the other leading brands of candles. Quality ingredients, quality packaging, affordable prices, longer burning. These were created by people who love candles. They started out experimenting, trying to create the perfect candle, and now they've blossomed into Cera Candle Company. Holiday season coming up. Perfect gift for your friends, your family, your loved ones, co-workers. Promo code GINO gets you 10% off your purchase. They've got 25 different scents available, 3 different sizes. Fragrance oils infused with natural essential oils. They've even got instructions and details on how to keep your candle clean and ensure the perfect burn. CERACandles.com, Cera Candle Company. Don't forget that promo code GINO. It'll get you 10% off of your purchase. We head over to Friday racing, and we're going to talk about Churchill Downs first on Friday with the Grade 1 Clark as the feature here. Looks like a card that I thought was pretty darn good. To kick things off in race number 1, a couple horses I would use in some of the early exotics. I don't know who goes with the 3, Niles Channel, early on. He exits a very live race in here, and he's going to be tough on the front end. I thought the 8 was a total wild card on the drop-in class. Shaka, who comes into a new barn, and this sort of just looks like starting over for a horse who's faced better. So I would use the two of them, the 3 and the 8, some of the early exotics. Race number 2, Mechanicville, is a horse who I would be looking at to make a win wager on if we can get around 5-1 or so. He ran into some trouble going into the first turn. He ended up getting shuffled, and he was stuck inside. He angled off to the 2 path. He ended up getting up to 4th. He was within about a length. He got up to 3rd, making a 3-wide move. The top 2 horses in that race came back to win. Now he's going to be making his second start against the claiming company, dropping in class again. Give me Mechanicville at around 5-1 in race number 2 at Churchill on Saturday. We move to race number 3. This is not a race to play, just a race we're going to look at. A couple horses that are sort of polarizing. Silver State, who was a nice horse earlier on in the year, multiple graded stakes placed. And then you have Dennis's Moment, who was your Breeders' Cup favorite back in 2019. And then he came back in the Fountain of Youth and didn't show anything, and he's been gone for quite some time. So he's making his return to the races. Just a race to watch, the number 2 and the number 4. We won't be really playing anything in this one. We move to race number 4, maiden special weights here, 2-year-olds. They're going to be going 5.5 furlongs. These filly, this is a colt, the 5 I'm looking at, Dr. Roger. He is a 2-year-old son of Frosted, and the dam of this one, Peach Brew, was a 5-time winner, earned $320,000, won the debut going 5.5 furlongs on the dirt, was actually a grade 3 winner that has produced 3 foals. 2 of them have won. And this is a barn that's really good first time out. If you go back over the last 5 years, they're around 15% or so. They've actually won with 2 of their last 3 first-time starters, and they're just rolling at the meet right now. The number 5, Dr. Roger, will be using an all exotics. Going to make a win wager at anything over 5-2. In race number 5, I'll look at a couple in here. I thought the 2 Honorable Memory is probably the one to catch, and I'll make sure I use her in a lot of the exotics. The number 5, Never Forget, will try to show some speed. I think Jilted Bride should be able to get enough pace cutting back to get a nice setup in here. So Jilted Bride at 6.5 furlongs, I think, is the key for this one. Anything around 5-2 makes sense. Coming back off of the break, drawn really well, proven sprinting, and ran well going longer, so distance and the in-between trip should be no problem. Kept company with some nice ones earlier on in the year. Let's use the 6 along with the 2 Honorable Memory in race number 5. No real strong opinion in the 6, so we'll just move to race number 7. And I'm going to the number 8 in here, Stripping, who was tracking inside and was like maybe 6th or so, but only about 2 lengths off the pace, and angled to the outside and just went right by. 3-wide move without really being asked. Was super impressive winner. Ends up drawing off, wins by 7+. That is Stripping, who will try to stretch out a little bit more in here. Visually very impressive. Anything around 3-1. I will be playing this one to win. Make sure to use Stripping in your exotics. The 8th race, I'm looking at the 9. My Last First Kiss. Probably around 6-1 is what I would want to play a win wager on My Last First Kiss, who's going to stretch back out from 6 furlongs to a mile and a 16th. Second off the 6 months break. Probably going to be sitting 3rd or 4th in here from the outside, so I think should fall into a really nice trip. Throw the 9, My Last First Kiss, into some of your exotics. In the 9th race, the 2 Signalmen tried to go longer last time. Total excuse. You can put a line right through it. That's just not the trip that he wants. He has run well at Churchill always. He ran really well 2 starts back going a mile and a 16th. And you can make legitimate excuses for some of his poor performances, and you can go back and start to cross him out. And he's a little more consistent than you think. Signalman, much better spot for him today. Likes it at Churchill. 4-1 or so is about what I'd want to make a win wager on him. I'd probably want a similar price or so as we move to the Clark on the horse who I like. I'm going to play the 5 over the 3 and the 12. Tons of respect for Code of Honor. Tons of respect for By My Standards. But Aurelius Maximus had a little bit of trouble in his last start, and that may have cost him the win. He had a really good start from the outside, and he was sitting in a great spot. He was sitting second, just off the lead. He was in the 2 path, about a length off. and a couple horses to his outside made an early move, so he ends up getting caught in between horses. He's too deep of 4. Instead of being in the middle of this traffic, he ends up taking back and takes back a length. He ends up losing his momentum, and he has to go wide and go around, and that was probably the difference between winning and losing when you're only beaten, a long neck in the end. I think with a slightly different trip, Aurelius Maximus would have won that race, and he's the type of horse who makes his own trip with that nice tactical running style. Let's put the 5 on top of the 3 and the 12. I'll make a win wager on Aurelius Maximus if we can get anything around 5-1. And a horse I might be singling to close things all out is the number 1, My Main Girl. She's raced twice. In her debut, it was back in November of 2019. She drew the rail. She showed a lot of speed. She was favored that day, but she had a tough trip. She faded. She came back about a year later, a little less than a year. She was a step slow from the inside, then right up on the heels of the leaders. She was tracking inside. She's just loaded, but with nowhere to go, waiting for room, trying to find a way through. She got room to the 2-path. She took the lead, and then she just faded late. That was her first start in a year. She needed the race. Now she's going to go second off the bench. It's going to be her 3rd start overall, and now her 3rd time down on the inside. So she's probably got it a little bit more figured out than some other young fillies when they have to deal with the rail. My Main Girl, the game plan for her might just be go. I don't know, there's some other speed in here, but I think she's the quickest with the inside draw. Just break alertly, send hard. My Main Girl, the number 1 in race number 11. So on Friday at Churchill, in the first, I'm going to be using the 3 and the 8 in some exotics. Second race, I'll make a wager on the 2 Mechanicville. Third, just a race to keep an eye on. The 4th race, we're playing the 5 Dr. Roger. In the 5th, I'll be using the 2 Honorable Memory with the 6 Jilted Bride. In the 7th, the 8 Stripping. In the 8th, the 9 My Last First Kiss. In the 9th, Signalman, the 2. In the 10th, Aurelius Maximus, and in the 11th, My Main Girl, the number 1, as a late exotics single. We move along from Churchill to Aqueduct. Couple plays for Friday at Aqueduct. Get those past performances out. We'll start in race number 1 at Aqueduct with the number 5 Reunion Tour, who debuted, and he just got destroyed at the start. He was 10th, about 10 lengths off, and it was in the slop. And after the start, he actually ran well up the inside. He just had no shot with that beginning on that kind of racetrack. The winner was a wire-to-wire winner that day. Reunion Tour. I think he's going to run a lot better. A little more distance to work with in here. Let's use the 5 Reunion Tour and make a win wager if we can get anything around 3-1. Let's move to race number 5 for the next play at Aqueduct. And this is a stakes race here. This is the Gio Ponte. I got introduced to Bodie Cream when he was running back at Sam Houston in January 2020. This is a nice horse, and this is a slightly softer spot than the one that he was just in, where he finished a really nice 3rd behind Get Smokin'. He had a good start. He settled inside. He was 4th, about 4 lengths off. He was tucked in. He was chasing Lone Speed that day, who was the eventual winner, and he was, down on the inside, and he never really had a shot to stretch his legs. He got some room, but he never really had an opening to really get going after waiting. So with a better trip, a little bit of a cleaner trip, he's a winner in this race. The problem is he does have a tough post towards the outside, but I'm not going to give you anything too outside the box in here. To me, it's him and it's Basquiat. Those are the 2 I'm looking at, the 11 and the 4, and neither one of them is going to be a huge price. Basquiat has faced some nice horses in his last 3 races, right? He's lost 3 in a row, but he lost to the Grade 1 Next Out winner Happy Saver. He lost to Next Out Stakes winner Proven Strategies and Next Out Stakes winner Ever Dangerous. So he's lost to 3 consecutive horses who have come back to win stakes races. 11-4 in race number 5 at Aqueduct. Anything around 7-2, I'd make a win wager on Bodie Cream there. We move to the 8th race. This is the other stakes race on the card. Again, I can't really get too crazy, too outside the box in this one. I do think the 5 and the 6 are super logical. Thankful and Mrs. Danvers, they're going to be tough again right back in here. Mrs. Danvers probably the one to beat. Even though Thankful has defeated her before, she had a tougher trip that day, did Mrs. Danvers. So I'll use those two. I thought the 4, My Sweet Wife, if you're looking for a price horse to include, would be that next horse to throw into some of your exotics. So 654 for me in race number 8. But the horse I am intrigued by on the Aqueduct card on Friday is the number 7 in race number 9. And that is No Mo Lady, who she had a truff trip, right? A troubled tough. You see what I did there? I combined the two of them. Truff tip, where she was a tough trip, where she was a step slow, settled 5th. She was inside. She's about 5 lengths off, and she was waiting to go, but she had no room down there. She tried to angle out, no room, ducked back to the inside, and got stopped. Sneaky good effort from No Mo Lady, the number 7. If we get anything around 6-1, I'm going to make a win wager in race number 9 in Aqueduct. So in the first, the number 5 Reunion Tour. In the 5th race, we'll look at 411. In the 8th race, it'll be 654 for me. And then in race number 9, the number 7, No Mo Lady, the one I will be playing at Aqueduct on Friday. Let's get over to Delta Downs for Friday. Remember, this is leg 3 of that big Turkey Bowl series at Delta Downs. You want to get involved at Stable Duel, $50 entry fee to get in on Friday at Stable Duel. In the opener, I think the 6, Sid Asta, the big cutback, the blinkers on. She can pass horses too, and this is a trip that she likes. She's coming out of some races at Canterbury against some pretty sharp horses. If you look at Hush Y'all, who came back to win against 20,000 beaten claimers next out. Timogen Lady is a nice, sharp, lightly raced horse who's 3 for 5. Biscottini came back to win next time out at Thistledown. Blinks on for a barn who started this meet absolutely rolling. And Eckleberry keeps the faith here and is aboard for the number 6 in race number 1 at Delta Downs. Anything around 3-1 will make a win wager there. In race number 2, I'm looking at the 7 in here. That is Flash Annie, who put it all together last time out. This is not the strongest group in the world, and her numbers and figures are a little bit low, but she's on the upswing. She's really not done a whole lot wrong in her career. She was fine in the race where she went a mile, and I think she's going to really take well to this layout at Delta Downs. The number 7, Flash Annie, will be using and playing to win if we can get around 7-2. I'm going to move on to race number 5 at Delta for my next play, and this is one that I like quite a bit in here. I'm looking at the number 8, Rock Ridge, who had a slow start at Remington Park, and then he rushed up in between horses. He was in tight, then he was 3 deep in between horses. He took up, he ended up losing a couple lengths. He lost all of his momentum. He got stuck in between horses, and he was in a really bad spot. He kept trying all the way. He really had nowhere to go, and then he faded late, and that was his first start since February. He's going to put 2 starts together now. There were 3 next out winners in that November race at Remington, so it's come back very, very live. I think the game plan has to be get aggressive with him towards the outside. I don't know if he's going to be on the lead, but I think he should break well and be able to get a good position for himself here. Rock Ridge, I think he's going to get bet down. Anything around 2-1 or over seems fair to me as we move along to race number 6. I'm looking at the 10 in here. The 2 Pickens is the one to catch and beat. Plenty of respect for Pickens. I will be hooking him up with the 10, Broadway Jones, who has enough speed to stay close, but he can pass horses. And he's not really dealing with the long layoff. Put a line through his last start in the slop last time out. He likes this trip, cutting back. The number 10, Broadway Jones. We'll use the 10 with the 2 in race number 6 at Delta on Friday. In race number 7, I'm looking at the number 10 in here, Love and Lemons. She should be forwardly placed, and she actually could be, sitting third if the number 2 and the number 8 go. Last time out, she had a good start. She sat second just off. She was in the 2 path. She moved to the lead, and then she got challenged on all sides. She held off all of those, and then here comes a rail runner who, she's battling back, and she just couldn't hold off a horse down the center of the racetrack, Dablin Channel, who is a next out winner, and Dablin Channel came out of that race to actually win her 3rd in a row. Love and Lemons, the number 10, anything around 2-1 or so will make a win wager on this one. The 8th race at Delta Downs is the $100,000 Treasure Chest Stakes, and I like the 4 Regal Beauty, who is just sharp. She's done so little wrong in her career. She has legitimate excuses for the 2 poor performances. One of them, she was sent to the bench for a while. The other, she was in tough against Graded Stakes Company in the Santa Anita Oaks. Since changing barns, she has been in 4 consecutive tries. She's looking for her 3rd win in a row. She had a slow start. She was last of 8 early on. She was in the 2 path. She was about 6 lengths off. She made a big, wide, sweeping move to get up late. She can sit closer. Now that she's stretching back out to a mile, she probably will be. And Signs jumps aboard. The number 4, Regal Beauty top selection. Anything over 8 to 5. She's probably a late exotic single. Definitely a stable dual horse to use. And yeah, if she is 2 to 1 or so, I'll throw a few on her to win. Probably the same for the number 7, Sweet Perfection, to close things out. There really is no other speed in here on paper. She looks like she should have a few lengths on this field. Second off the bench, putting 2 starts together. Blinkers on, dropping in class. The number 7, Sweet Perfection, should be really tough to catch and run down late. She will be my top selection and a late exotic single. So in the first, we're using the 6. In the second, the number 7. In the 5th race, the number 8, Rock Ridge. The 6th, the number 10, Broadway Jones. The 7th, the number 10, Love and Lemons. The 8th, the number 4, Regal Beauty. And the 9th, the number 7, Sweet Perfection. That is Friday over at Delta. Let's finish off the Friday heading to Del Mar. Don't forget about that Friday Del Mar contest, stable duel, $5 contest. You can also play the $100 top 10 contest. Let's jump into race number 1. I'm going to just kind of breeze through the card because I do think that it's a little bit chalky, to be completely honest. So, I try not to spend a lot of time on races that I'm going to tell you, oh, hey, I like the favorite or the second choice in here. In the opener, the 4, Explosive, will probably be a first-time starter for a barn who's rolling right now that's going to come out firing. And Yang, again, the 9 is going to be tough, so nothing too crazy there. In the second, I thought it was going to be chalky, too, with El Huerfano dropping or coming back to the mile on the main track. So, yeah, nothing too crazy there with the 3. Even the same thing in the 3rd. I thought the 6, Viazar, was going to be very, very tough in here. In the 4th race, now we can start to maybe open it up a little bit here with Lady O Prado. She was claimed for 20 at Churchill. She's had to work here at Del Mar since, but she's fresh. She's been off a couple months over since she's last raced. She's going to cut back from a mile and a 16th to 6.5 furlongs for Bob Hess Jr., with Magnolia's Hope, Lady on Ice, and Shalima all likely showing speed in here. This thing should set up very nicely for the number 4, Lady O Prado. We'll be playing the 4-horse there to win and using in all of our exotics. In the 5th race, I think the 1's got some ability here. The dam of this one, Fakashina, won on turf. The graded stakes placed dam on the dirt with 3 siblings that she's produced, foals, 2 of them winners, 1 of them won on the turf. Looks like she's got some ability in the mornings. So the number 1 we'll throw into all of our exotics. If we can get around 5 or 6 to 1, worthy of a win wager. The 7 and 8 are very logical. Those are the 2 horses to beat. I think you have to use them in your exotics too. The 4 would be another that I'd look to, another Mandela first-time starter who could be live. The 6th race, the 3, Jam and Eddie, looks tough, so nothing really too crazy to discuss there. In the 7th race, the Hollywood Turf Cup, Grade 2 here, I like the 8. This is Lucario for Motion, who came over to Belmont on October the 3rd in the Turf Classic, was 5th early, was in the 2 path, was about 5 lengths off, was chasing the lone speed of Channelmaker, and this guy got caught in between horses, got shuffled back, had to angle around, and took a while to get going, but was a very nice second, and was behind Channelmaker, who came back to run 3rd in the Breeders' Cup. I think Lucario's the one to beat, and I will throw in the 3, Red King, who's going to come back home. I just don't know if he's good enough, but he should feel a lot more comfortable back in Southern California where he's done his best running. We move along and Del Mar on Friday, and The 8th and the 9th races, to be honest, the 9th race, the 4 is another one where it looks like On Easy Street is going to be really, really tough. So throughout the card, just a few races where I felt like there were opportunities to jump in, but hey, no problem. We got plenty of opportunities on Thursday, on Friday, and then on Saturday. Make sure to follow along on social media because I will be posting another podcast for the Saturday races with Andrew Champagne. We're going to go through the stable duel contest with big contests at Del Mar and at Delta. We're also going to talk about Churchill Downs and that all graded stakes card on that all 2-year-old card on Saturday with a couple graded stakes races there. So a really good 2-year-old Churchill card on Saturday. Before we get into some wrestling, let's talk a little bit about one of the sponsors of That's What G Said. OldSmokeClothing.com. I know you're a horse racing fan. You were listening to all the horse racing analysis. We are giving you free shipping with the promo code of GINO because you're a listener of That's What G Said. That's what Old Smoke Clothing is willing to do. Give you free shipping on horse racing t-shirts, hats, zip-ups, hoodies, tank tops, long sleeves, quality clothings. You can get custom designs with whatever you want on them. You can check out some of their special collections like the Kentucky Derby collection or the Secretariat collection. You can represent some of your favorites. Tis the Law, Midnight Bisou, Authentic, She Dares the Devil. Maybe you want to be a part of the Old Smoke Clubhouse where they have quarterly packages that include a t-shirt, a horse racing themed gift, various package fillers. They have quarterly packages that ship to you the first week of January, April, July, and October. Membership perks, 20% off all orders, access to the online forum, video feature appearances, quarterly betting contests, cashback referral, additional perks. Check it out. Clubhouse at oldsmokeclothing.com. Oldsmokeclothing.com is the website for everything. Make sure to look at that Clubhouse too. And hey, promo code GINO gets you free shipping on your order. Now we talk a little bit about some wrestling, WWE. We recap the Survivor Series from over the weekend, talk all about The Undertaker and his 30 years, and then everything moving forward from the Survivor Series. Darin Zoccali joins to talk wrestling. It is Thanksgiving week, so a traditional sort of big moment in the world of wrestling. The holiday season always, in old wrestling, even well before WWF, WWE, was always a sort of a big days because families would always be around. Later in the days, they'd always have big wrestling shows. So Survivor Series became something that us WWE fans would associate with Thanksgiving. And before we get into the wrestling, though, one gentleman who I'm very thankful for, good friend of mine, he comes on here and he helps us each and every week. We talk wrestling, horse racing. This week, we're going to talk some football even and some wrestling with Darin. Very thankful for my good friend Darin Zoccali. And Darin, I know you're pretty thankful for a horse that you had in the winner's circle this week.
Oh yeah. It was cool, man. We ran a filly over at Churchill Downs named Stylish Kitten that we claimed over at Indiana at the end of July, and she had won 2 races before that for us. Bumped her up to a 20 claimer and kind of did a little bit of a Silky Sullivan impersonation. Down the backside, she wasn't even in the picture, and she made up about 13, 14 lengths and kind of went by the whole field and won going away by a length and a half. Unbelievable thrill to win a race at Churchill Downs, and sending a couple of horses now on over to Turfway for the winter meet there, including a horse that we claimed a couple of weeks ago that we're really excited about. So, it's been a fun 3.5, 4 months. Pretty successful so far, but really excited for 2021 when it comes to the ownership group Thorough Crowd. So, we're pretty pumped, and that was a thrill of a lifetime for me, man.
We were real excited rooting along for you there. So DZ, we are in the world of wrestling and in WWE in particular, coming off of the Survivor Series, which I thought was a good show. This year, what was different about the Survivor Series, it was the 30-year anniversary of the debut of The Undertaker. So this was sort of built around the final farewell for The Undertaker. So I think even before the other matches and some of the stuff coming out of that show, we could start there. So what they did with really this segment, it was the final segment of the show, it was basically the main event of the pay-per-view. And they brought out, it was sort of interesting because there were some things about it I liked, but what's strange about this in particular is the character of The Undertaker. He's not like a Ric Flair that you bring out there, or even a Hulk Hogan or someone like that who has been, someone that's cut promos and had all these interactions. He's a guy that doesn't talk a lot. So it's always interesting when you have a final segment like this. And you and I were texting about this back and forth throughout the show. It's hard to do something like this without the fans. It seemed a little hollow. I like what they did. They brought out a lot of his old rivals, a lot of people that were his friends backstage, but we didn't really get stories about a lot of them. We just kind of got in passing, oh yeah, this was one of his friends in the BSK, or this was this. There were some things I liked, but it sort of still felt like it was missing something.
Yeah. I mean, after the career that he had, it just doesn't feel right that The Undertaker goes out without fans in attendance. I understand they're doing it, 30 years to the day after his debut. I get the angle there. Myself, I would have waited until maybe, a WrestleMania or something when there would be people there, but I get what they were doing.
Yeah.
The thing of it with him is that, look, it's not even up for a debate. The Undertaker is the greatest character in the history of professional. Not necessarily the greatest wrestler, but the greatest character. And the importance in that is that Mark Calloway lived as the Undertaker.
Yeah.
For a long time. Not just, and when I say lived as the Undertaker, I mean he wore black wherever he went and didn't talk in public.
Traveling, airports, on the road, in restaurants. Yes. He's not doing interviews on podcasts with people and autograph signings and all that, those kind of things.
Exactly. And the significance of that is because that you were never going to get the pomp and circumstance of a farewell for him like you would any other wrestler, where everyone came out to the ring and they shook his hand and embraced him and
hugging and this and that, and
that's just not going to happen with him because he is so connected to that character and lived his life as that character, and speaks to this day of saying that he has had a hard time internally accepting the fact that things like the internet and social media have kind of forced him to pull the curtain down a little bit and get people to kind of peek in and realize, oh, The Undertaker is this person, Mark Calloway. So he's going to go out as The Undertaker. It's going to be a promo as The Undertaker. He's not going to thank anybody. He's not going to show real emotion. And that's kind of the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah. Because
that's the character that he is. So from that standpoint, I think you were going to get an Undertaker promo as The Undertaker regardless. But that being said, it still felt like it was missing something because despite the virtual screens, it took place in an empty arena.
So we got a lot of, we got Savio Vega, Rikishi, JBL, and then, we got Shawn Michaels, Triple H, just a lot of different rivals throughout The Undertaker's career and some of his backstage friends. And then he came out, he had his, one thing that's even, my girlfriend Stephanie was laughing. She said, he's really walking slow this time, huh? Even really laying it on thick for what they're saying will be his last final farewell. We've had it a few times with him, and this happens in wrestling. He deserves to have either Raw in a packed crowd the night before or the night after WrestleMania, or a WrestleMania moment where he comes out and he gives a send off. He deserves that with the crowd, and I think he'll still get it at some point. Like you said, it's the anniversary and to the date, so they can't really recreate that. You could do it again next year, the year after, in 31, 32 years to the date, whatever. That's fine, as long as they give him another moment with the crowd, at least, even if it was a moment very similar to this, where I don't expect him to do it. Like you said, he's not going to come out there and say, okay, hey guys, now I'm Mark. Right. You know, he's just not going to do that. And that's just even, which is funny right now, with some of the things that are floating around the internet about the Undertaker, because he's starting to, in the last really 2 months or so, basically since the WWE gone with this Last Ride documentary, we've actually started to see him in other places doing interviews as himself and not the Undertaker. But what I've been laughing at are some of these cameos. Have you seen these, Darin, floating around with the Undertaker, where people have paid $1,000 to get the Undertaker to do a message for you, and he's saying things like, hey, you need to brush your teeth because your mom said so. You know, it's like, it's pretty funny. Somebody even said something like people are paying him $1,000 just to say, like, thank you, Vince. You are the one that made my career. You know, just like goofy stuff. But this guy, it's one thing where, man, in an era now where wrestling's very different, this guy was such a mainstay. It does feel like for someone like you or I, who, you know, in a weird way, it's like when I saw, when you see people, it's different. He's alive and stuff. When you see someone pass away, that's been like a figure in your life for a long time, or been a character on a show or something like that for a long time, and then they're not there. This guy was a mainstay for 30 years, you know, the better part of at least 25 years where he's around at WrestleMania. You can kind of count on it. So it's definitely sad. Even every time we have a moment like this, or we have when we see him go, it's definitely something to look back on and go, wow, you know what? There have been a lot of moments where I sat down and watched this guy and he entertained me for a while. So I'm always, you know, giving a little tip of the hat to the Taker.
Yeah, it's one of those things like, you know, like for me, like Derek Jeter retired, you know, was like, you know, me kind of like saying goodbye to a part of my childhood, even though I was, you know, 31 years old or 32 years old.
Kobe for me, same type of thing. Yeah.
So, and I'm 37. So it sounds a little goofy to say it, but if you think about, like, if I think about all the things that were around when I was 9 or 10 years old, that are still around now, and I don't mean like actual sports franchises, like individual people that are still doing things. I mean, other than like maybe musicians or something to that effect, but there's not a lot that I can think of off the top of my head that I really like kind of connect with. So this was like another one of those things where it was like, you know, a part of my childhood ends, because, you know, how many nights I spent watching, you know, Undertaker, you know, with my dad, watching pay-per-views together, or, you know, and one of the things, and then I'm sure it'll be a regret, and it's not to any fault of mine or anybody else's. It was just bad luck. Of all the shows, and I've talked to you about this before.
Yeah, you have.
All the shows that I've been to, and I've been to dozens and dozens of wrestling shows, house shows, pay-per-views,
WrestleManias, you name it. Yeah.
It's unbelievable that I have never seen The Undertaker in person. It is possible.
It's absurd, really.
Yeah. I mean, you think about it. I mean, he, out of 30 WrestleManias, 30 consecutive, you know, WrestleManias, I think he wrestled in 27 of the 30, because he's 25-2, I believe, in WrestleMania. I was at WrestleMania 10. He was not there. I was at the most recent WrestleMania at MetLife Stadium. He was not there. The closest I came to seeing The Undertaker in person was at the 25th anniversary of Raw, except I was at the Barclays Center and he was at the Manhattan Center. So it's amazing that it's never happened, and I've tried. I've even bought tickets. I was going to WrestleMania this year because I figured it would probably be his last match, and of course COVID happened. So, and I'm not blaming myself for that.
No, but
it's sad.
It's one of those weird things.
It's one of those weird things. I've never heard the gong in the building, and that's, you know, a part of me is sad about that I never had that experience.
And so heading back into Survivor Series and where it kind of moved off of Survivor Series into Monday Night Raw. Overall, I thought the show was good. It was good. There were a couple really good matches as we expected. The women's title match and the men's title match were very good. They weren't for the title. It was Raw women's versus men's and Universal versus WWE. But as far as the SmackDown or as far as the Survivor Series matches are concerned, the elimination matches, the one thing that I think we've had conversations about too with Andrew when we've talked about the old wrestling shows and stuff is that we just need to add a little bit of stakes to them. And what's so funny is like watching what they're going to do, what they did coming off of the show anyways, like how much more would most people, I think, enjoyed watching Survivor Series just knowing that, oh, hey, if you are one of the survivors in the men's match, you're going to get a shot at a title. Right, we're gonna put you in a match. It's gonna be whatever it's gonna be. Explain it to us just like you did. Hey, the next night there will be qualifying matches for the survivors, and then you'll win. Or hey, like all of you will get an individual title. You don't have to worry about like hating on your teammates during the. Just give us something to give us a little bit more stakes. Hey, the tag team, there could be a tag team elimination match. The winner there gets a tag. They could do it, Darin, with like an IC level in a US level. It's so simple just to give a little bit of stakes to it like they already did last night. Why couldn't they just tell us 2 weeks before, hey, whoever wins the women's match, we're going to give them a women's championship. If they don't want Lana to win the women's title, that's fine. And they could have done just what they did last night. They could have had her in a match with Asuka, and then boom, Nia and Shayna interfere, and then that sends them off for the women's tag. Like they could do everything they just did, but just let us know before, hey, there's going to be a little added incentive. I think that would have helped the pay-per-view a little bit.
Yeah, even in the years where, even if there was no like added incentive in terms of a title match, but like, having when they would have like commissioners or general managers, like, kind of like, squabbling back and forth and, making it feel like there was like stakes on the line, like their job was on the line.
Yeah.
If their team's lost. Like for this, it was just kind of like, it didn't mean anything other than, like Roman Reigns being disappointed in Jey Uso and continuing, that whole tribal storyline.
Well, the men's was basically like the whole SmackDown side was really nothing. That was all for the Jey Uso storyline.
Yes, that's all it was. Yeah. I mean, the Seth Rollins thing, I guess that's going somewhere. I don't know where. I don't know what that's going to be.
I think Seth is going to be off for a little while for paternity leave. That's coming up soon at some point if it's not right now, because he needs a tweak in the character, right? If it's heel, if he's going to come back as a babe, whatever it is, like the Messiah thing just felt like a miss. All along. And what it does is it ends up like Seth Rollins is one of those guys with the way he wrestles, and like he loves the WWE. He genuinely does. If you listen to him and like you watch him on social media, he goes to bat for them. Like he should be your company babyface guy or one of them that you're selling. Instead, he's kind of been like he's better as a heel. I think he's like his promo wise and stuff. He doesn't really have this strong babyface promo, but I don't like him in this character. Maybe we can get a freshening for him.
Yeah, so I agree. He's better naturally as a heel, but him as a heel doesn't need a shtick.
No.
Yeah, just let him be like the a-hole that he's been as a heel at times, and it works.
Even kind of tweenery where he can be like, hey, I'm a heel because I just think I'm better than you. Yeah. Like that would be fine. Like a Punk kind of heel where he's kind of a cool heel, but he doesn't have to be like a corny baby face. It's just they've done a poor job through the years, and we've seen it with Daniel Bryan where they just can't really can't really write a baby face, and that'll sort of lead us into, while we're sticking on the men's side, what they've done with Roman Reigns. And I think one of the few baby faces that they have written well for recently is Drew McIntyre. And I really liked this match. I really liked I like everything that's going on with Roman and with the Usos. You can feel like there's a lot of different ways to that, right? At some point, Uso's going to screw Roman. And it's going to be the downfall of Roman in a big moment, losing the title. Something's going to happen. That's going to set it off even more. So, and there's a lot of layers with that. This is some awesome stuff. We finally got this Roman, it almost feels like when The Rock, it almost feels like with The Rock, you know, when he was Rocky Maivia for a while and then he turned The Rock, and it's like, oh, this is what this guy was supposed to be all along, you know. This felt like in an era, Darin, where there aren't too many matches you can throw out that feel like, oh, well, we haven't really seen that, or, you know, we've seen some version of this in some way, shape, or form. The Drew Roman stuff feels really fresh.
Yeah, and I think I'll be honest, the stuff that they've done with Roman over the last, 3.5 to 4 months has been some of the best work creatively that they've done in a long time. They figured him out. They've stopped with the whole cheesy lines and
succotash.
Yeah, whatever crap that they're trying to get him to say. And I'm sure they're still writing stuff for him, but a lot of it is coming off much, even like the trash talk in the ring. When he's got Drew down, he's like, "Come on, number 2, come on." That's a great line.
I guarantee you, Heyman's more involved too in this. It feels like it.
Yeah, I'm sure. But the Roman character, the storyline with the Usos, I'm sure that. Yeah. By the way, I think I picked up on something. If you saw that Roman was starting to talk to Joe a little bit too.
Mm-hmm.
And Joe obviously having some Samoan blood, and all Samoan blood. My feeling is, we're probably going to be heading to a point where Joe gets involved at some point, and we're going to start to see some kind of a Samoan faction expand here. But he had a great line to Joe where he said something to him like, "You know what's coming, Joe. You've been there." It was a good. I forgot exactly what it was, but it was a good line. The McIntyre stuff is great. Even though that they had like the little brief like kind of rivalry to get Roman back on track last year into WrestleMania, this feels fresh.
Mm-hmm.
The stuff even at the contract signing, which normally I hate contract signings, I thought it was really cool. Drew said to him like, "Please underestimate me." The way Roman just kind of like condescendingly looked at him and like, "I'm the guy and you're the guy just carrying this other belt." It feels real fresh. There's obviously going to be a lot more that happens. I thought the match was fantastic.
It was.
Yeah.
And it was well put. Like, this is another thing where they had a lot of outs, and I'm glad they used one of them, because I didn't want to see one of these two guys really go clean over the other right here. Yep. You have so many ways they could have gotten out with the Fiend, the Money in the Bank briefcase. They had Orton. They had all these different ways, and I'm glad they used one of them with Uso. That's great. That continues that storyline along the way, and it just gives me a taste for this. It was like they started to get to the level where it's like, okay, now I want to see these guys in 6 months, or I want to see these guys go at it again. And so this was it's tough in this COVID era. It's been tough to build things, right? You don't know what's going. You want to say something big for crowds, but you don't know if you're going to get crowds, when you're going to get crowds. I think now they're finally just starting to say, hey, you know what? Like it's starting to feel like we're getting a tweak towards WrestleMania season again. I liked what they did with Raw too. What we said with all of the guys that were the survivors on the Raw side, they turned Raw into a show that on Monday that felt important, because there were all these qualifying matches to get to a triple threat to face Drew along the way. So boom, there's no reason why every episode of Raw or SmackDown can't have matches similar to that for one of the titles, for number one contenders matches. Just give me a couple matches that mean a little something, and they make them a little bit better. Even the stuff with the stuff, and then we switch over to the women's side. We'll talk about on the women for a few minutes. The Lana stuff was really predictable. You could see for a few months they were building Lana getting thrown through table after table after table. There was going to be some sort of a moment for Lana, and she ends up.
Yeah, but that, you see, that was a dumb way to do it, though.
I know.
Like you threw the girl through 9 tables. Could she get a pin?
A pin?
I mean, could she pin one person?
That's what I mean. One person. She didn't even step into the ring, really.
I know.
So that's what. And then the next night, she's celebrating like she won the fit. Like, oh my God, I can't even think about it. I'm so emotional. I got all these messages from everyone. For everything I did. So we knew she was going to get the moment, like you said. Her moment should have been a little better. And you know what? Maybe the moment really is what they're starting to build. And maybe the moment for her is going to be she ends up actually putting Nia through a table at TLC and her and Asuka win the women's tag team titles together. That might be, if that ends up being her moment, then, and they were kind of just putting this all along the way, then this would be actually pretty good storytelling. And that would be I would be okay with that, because that's a way that they've done with for years now with WWE in tables matches, where they could have somebody lose without really taking a pin, and you can sort of get out of it.
I'll tell you what though, unless it's going to be like a Bret Hart 1995 Survivor Series table. I don't, where Nia's like standing out in the apron and just
she moves.
Yeah, and just like
the bull
falls backwards. And how they're going to get Lana to put Nia through a table.
Right. It's going to be
real creative.
Yeah, it's going to be. So we'll keep an eye on that. And, just looking at, I'm not a real big ratings monitoring, especially in this era. Football starting again, and so many people stream stuff, watch it later on Hulu a couple days later, whatever. So I don't pay attention to a lot of those things as much. But one thing recently, SmackDown's ratings have been really, really good. And I think there are two things that you can easily point to. All of the Roman stuff, hands down. That's like, people are really interested in it. One of your big stars is finally like having a really good run where he feels like a big star. And I think the other one is Sasha Banks. Honestly, she is forever been someone that the fans are very behind. She is a star. She is excellent in the ring. She's good on the mic. She's even coming off of an episode of The Mandalorian that she starred in a couple weeks ago. So she's got a little bit more buzz to her. And she had, as you would imagine, a really good match with Asuka on Sunday night. So, Bayley did for a lot of this year, and now we got to give it up to Sasha. And Asuka's carried the load for a while. They've done a good job, because we got to remember, this was a division that for a while there was Ronda, there was Becky for a heck of a while, and Charlotte, and none of them are there right now.
Yeah, they definitely had to carry the mail. It's been a kind of quick, it's been a relatively quick transition out of there too, because Ronda was one day and then just gone the next. Becky, was here for a year and then all of a sudden was gone. Similar with Charlotte. So, and doing all that at a time without live crowds, and and not only that, but you had like a 5-month period where Roman was gone too. So it was easy to understand why they were struggling. But you're right. In terms of the storyline, Sasha's done great work. Roman, the character that they've created there, is fantastic. I'm interested to see where they go with this whole Fiend Orton thing. I mean, that was on Monday. Whenever you put Orton in a situation where he has to act like that, it's kind of comical because
it is.
What Randy must be thinking, like in his head, that he has to like
this shit again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Like I got a guy in a clown mask creeping up behind me, and I have to act like I'm scared.
Exactly.
I go flying across the ring, but it's so damn enjoyable to watch. The Alexa Bliss thing is weird, but I'm kind of curious to see where
it's interesting. Yeah, it's
interesting.
It's captivating. She's like a weird,
Disney
character or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like she's like a weird evil character. It's great, And
to me, she looks like if Alice from Alice in Wonderland.
I was just thinking the Mad Hatter or something, right?
Yeah,
she's at the tea party. There's no doubt about it. She's like bouncing around there, it's good. And so it feels like it's like we talk about, it's like anything, you're a fan of New York, the Yankees, the Giants, these teams, it's cyclical. It's like sports teams, but these guys in WWE, now AEW, they don't have any off season. Right. So there's no time for them to take a few months to heal up or to, figure out the storylines for the next, everything is constantly moving, constantly flowing. Somebody gets hurt. Somebody's got a COVID thing. Somebody's not around. Hey, you got to redo this on the fly. Not to mention you've got a guy like Vince who's already redoing things on the fly all the time, leading up to it. So yeah, after some episodes, it's like, sometimes I'm sure for you too, when we watch 3 hours and then another couple, some weeks it's like, darn, it's feeling a little more like work than sitting down and loving it. And now coming off of this show, there are at least enough things where I look around and go, okay, cool. Now I'm excited about this moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. There's a bunch of angles that I'm curious to see where it takes them. And look, I don't know when we're going to see people in a building again. They're certainly, doing these things in the right state if that's their goal. I know Tampa Bay Downs comes back on Wednesday, and they're going to have fans there. Gulfstream has had some fans, and they don't seem to be. It seems like the governor of Florida just doesn't roll anything back at any point in time.
Yeah.
So, it's possible if they continue down this path, and it's possible that if WrestleMania, ends up in Florida where it was supposed to be last year, which we've heard rumblings about that happening, there could be fans there. I mean, who knows? But, for what they've been dealt a difficult hand like all sports. Ratings are not going to be as good. We've seen it with, the major horse racing events. We've seen it with the NBA finals. We've saw it with the Masters. Ratings are just not going to be there during this pandemic or all the wild stuff going on for a litany of reasons. They've done a good job recently. I think it's an enjoyable product again. Hopefully they build on the momentum and it stays that way for the months to come.
You hear Darin each and every week here. We talk a little bit about everything, mainly the old wrestling rewatch with Andrew Champagne. And so for next week, we've got Survivor Series 2016 on the docket. We'll be talking about that one for all you wrestling fans. You can follow Darin on social media, on Twitter @TheTrack7. Great follow, always talking about racing. You'll see stuff from harness to thoroughbred, lots of sports stuff too. As someone in the New York area, big baseball fan, football fan, fantasies fan too, and so that's where we're gonna head next. DZ, I'm gonna cut this one off for a minute. We're gonna take a little bit of a break here, and then you and I are gonna talk about those 3 Thanksgiving games this week. So don't go anywhere, folks. We'll be back in just a minute, and we're gonna be talking some NFL with Darin Zoccali. Big thank you to DZ. Darin Zoccali will be back talking the old wrestling rewatch Survivor Series 2016 next week with Andrew Champagne and Darin Zoccali. Let's close this out talking Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 4. So a spoiler alert. If you haven't watched Episode 4, we're going to talk about things that happened throughout the episode. And wow, we are really rapid fire moving along. The first 2 episodes of this season didn't really progress the storyline a whole ton. They were fun. They had the weekly adventure. What does Mando have to get through this week? Mando and Baby Yoda. And now we're starting to tie a lot of strings together. We're getting more background. We're getting things that are going to start to tie this show to the sequel trilogy events. We're getting in this episode all sorts of stuff about cloning. Trying to inject the Force, Palpatine, Sidious, Palpatine's son, the First Order, lots of stuff going on. Here we pick things up with the Razor Crest in shambles, and Baby Yoda's working on it. He doesn't know the difference between the red wires and the blue wires, and Mando realizes they need repairs, so they head back to visit some of their friends at Navarro. Cara Dune, who is busting a robbery, and she takes back some of what has been stolen. She is now Marshal Dune, and she actually meets a little friend, a pet meerkat. Mando lands, and he sees his friends Cara and Greef Karga. They agree to help with some of the repairs. But we can see someone spying on Mando as they walk away. The whole town has been cleaned up. It looks great, and there are tons of really cool details. You can see that Star Wars and the producers of this show are starting to have fun with some of the new toys and new tools, new technology they have, because we're really getting great details of this city. They have a little tribute statue to IG-11, and the old bar is now a school, and they leave Baby Yoda there for a few minutes. He's at school. It was funny. There's a boy sitting next to Baby Yoda who's eating what look to be these macaroons, and he won't give any to Baby Yoda, so he uses the Force to steal them, and he's like munching on these macaroons. They're blue, kind of like the blue milk, a little throwback to Luke Skywalker. We then see the prisoner from episode 1, from the very beginning, the pilot episode, Mythal, who is Mando's prisoner, and he makes a reference to the carbonite and being blind, so we're getting all these Easter eggs talking about Han Solo. They then ask Mando to help them. There's one last Imperial base that's on the area. They want to get rid of this, and then they can really have their planet and this place cleaned up. So while the ship's getting repaired, Mando helps the four of them. I butcher the names, some of them, Mythal, who with Mando, with Cara Dune and Greef Karga. So they break into what they think is an empty base to blow up, and there are actually troopers there. So they are at the point where they find the reactor to blow it up. Mythal triggers it, and this is a place that's more than what they initially thought. This is actually a lab with cloning. We see these tanks all over with clones in there, and we see the doctor from episode 1 that was working on Baby Yoda before Mando stopped him. He's talking, and we intercept this message where he's talking to Moff Gideon, and Mandalorian thinks it's an old message because he thinks Moff Gideon's dead. Now, this is how he finds out Moff Gideon's still alive. So Mandalorian immediately leaves to go back and get Baby Yoda, and the rest of the crew fight off the stormtrooper. Cara flies them out in this crazy commandeered vehicle. We get a really fun chase scene with the stormtroopers following them as Greef Karga mans the guns, and then Mando just kind of comes out of nowhere and saves them with Baby Yoda, and Baby Yoda's munching on the macaroons in the Razor Crest. And then Mando is off. He leaves. He's got to get on the move to go find where to take Baby Yoda, and he knows that Moff Gideon is now hot on his trail. The X-Wing pilot from before, the guy from Kim's Convenience, who had been following the Razor Crest, shows up, and he's asking some questions, Greef Karga and Cara Dune, about the ship. He actually asks Cara to join them. He knows something bad is happening. He knows. He asks her about Alderaan. He said he served there, and she mentions how she lost everyone. He leaves her a badge just in case she wants to join. He said they could use people like her. We then see that spy who, at the very beginning of the episode, planted that tracking device on the Razor Crest. So Moff Gideon knows where Mando is. He knows that Baby Yoda is with him, and he's able to track the Razor Crest now. And we see these crazy super trooper type machines being maintained while Moff Gideon gets ready. He's like rallying the troops and getting ready, because it looks like what they're trying to do is inject the Force and take the power from Baby Yoda and either put it into themselves or these fighters. And now we're getting all these crazy things that are tying the movies and these just different universes of Star Wars all together. Fascinating stuff. I keep looking forward to each weekly episode of The Mandalorian. Thank you, folks, for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Hope you all had a nice Thanksgiving and Thanksgiving weekend. We're going to have another episode coming out in just a few days to talk about some of the Saturday racing, and then we'll kind of confirm everything for NFL Saturday the Sunday Week 12 games. So don't forget, subscribe, download, rate, review, share the show around with your friends. Let them know about That's What G Said podcast. Joey, take it away.